Starting to stop twice. Good evening. I'd like to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board to order for Monday, May 19th, or Tuesday, May 19th, 2015. If you'd all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk Rattari, roll call, please.
Trustee Truscott.
Here.
Trustee Durant.
Here.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Pompo.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Limata.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Township Attorney Roger Zappa. Committee members are John Marks from the Zoning Boards of Appeal, Mike Springer from Roads and the Recreation Committee, Paul Limata is from the Recreation Committee, and Ellen Sargent from the Planning Commission. And that's it.
Thank you. The next item on your agenda is the consent agenda. As you are aware, the consent agenda typically includes those items that do not require board discussion. On this evening's is approval of prior meeting minutes of May 4th. Received committee reports, the water production report from April, the election statistics report, the Iron Ore Heritage Trail reports, including balance sheet, profit loss statement, Q1 versus budget, the general ledger. One note of interest especially is the proposal on the sculpture, the artistic sculpture that they got a grant for underneath that, the ore train, which was kind of cool. So I think you should check it out if you haven't seen it. We also have the Fire Marshal's report of April, Fire Department activity report of April, the Sheriff's Department activity from April, and Recreation draft minutes from April 21st, the draft meeting minutes from April 28th, and the agenda of May 19th. Correspondence not requiring board action includes a charter communication correspondence regarding the quarterly franchise fee payment and correspondence regarding a new channel addition. We also have this evening bills payable in the amount of $146,788.99. Are there any items in the consent agenda that any member of this board wishes to remove for further discussion? Clerk Rattari?
It's just a comment under the prior meeting minutes of May 4th. I am going to insert, when I do the minutes, including the closed session minutes.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Support.
Second.
Motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The next item on your agenda is approval of the remainder of the agenda. Are there any items on this agenda that the board wishes to make changes to? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. This will bring us up to public comment. Those members of the public wishing to address this board may do so at this time. First and last name and address at the podium, please.
Ellen Sargent, 685 Erie Avenue, from the Planning Commission. And here tonight, you have our capital improvement plan. If you're having a discussion on that, and I'm here if you have any questions. I don't know if it was in your packets or not, but we passed an addendum we've started based on the conversations that we've had as the two groups together with the new format for the capital improvement plan. The first step is different forms for the departments, asking them to prioritize projects based on essential or whether to defer, and so we'll be hopefully getting those back over the course of the summer, getting them in order, and having it for you when you begin your budget discussions. So if you have any questions, I'll be right over there by Kathy.
Thank you, Ellen.
Jack Dental, 2052 Center Street, Marquette, Michigan. I have over 30 years with the Marquette Fire Department, Township Fire Department. You know, it's a family to me. There has been good times and there's been bad times. Both Chief Sims and Fire Marshal Ron DeMars are personal friends of mine. This is not about Ron. Yeah, if Ron was in trouble, I'd be up here today for Ron too. My concern is the treatment that Chief Sims has been receiving from the supervisor. I thought in this country that you were innocent until proven guilty, not guilty and then proven innocent. My question is, why does the supervisor want to replace Chief Sims so fast when we have an acting chief, and his name is Dan Shanahan. He's our acting chief now. He was our assistant chief. He's doing an excellent job. Chief Sims has given 37 years of his life to this department that he loves. He is a charter member. A charter member started this department. Now, Chief Sims has earned my respect and gratitude for the excellent job he has done over the years. Chief Sims has an attorney. So let's give the attorneys their time to find out the truth. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Jack. Anyone else wishing to address the board?
Dennis Boyle, 2412 Cherry Street. I also am a member of the Township Fire Department for 24 years. I don't particularly think this issue is personal with Chief Sims, Ron DeMars, and that issue should be here. The issue that's on the agenda tonight is the fire department moving forward. After the last meeting that I attended, being a fire department member for so many years, was very disappointed in my employer and actually disgusted when I left here. I think we need to move forward. The issues at hand with prior employment need to be dealt with elsewhere, not here. This is and should only be the department moving forward in what we're doing right now and allowing this department to move forward. As we grow, as we get more, Chief Sims is a fine person. There is nobody here that will disagree with that one bit. But that is not our issue. Our issue is we need to move forward. We need to do that now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, Dina Sved, 1420 Cox. I'm here twofold. I'm here part as a township resident and a wife of a fire department member. I really think that we need to move forward with this whole issue as well. The fire department, we are so lucky to have these guys doing what they do. And I know there's been some concern about Ron has a full-time job within the township. All these guys have full-time jobs, except maybe a couple that are retired, and we're lucky that they still hang around and share their knowledge and their experience with us. But they have full-time jobs, they have families, and they have lives, and they still come to meetings, they do trainings, they educate continually, and then they still go on calls. And when are these calls? Some are during the day, some are during dinner, some are in the middle of the night. It can be hot, it can be cold, it can be freezing cold. And they go. And we are lucky that they are willing to do that, whether it be a holiday or anything. And, you know, sometimes the calls are simple and it's a lift assist for EMS, and it was simple enough. That's fine. But sometimes, like Lynn read the job description, they put their lives in danger. They face traumatic events and they see things that you don't want to see. And this is National EMS Week, and I'm hoping that the township acknowledged that we have such a wonderful department. And I don't know what happened with Chief Sims. I've heard rumors, and in my experience, sometimes rumors are fabricated truth, and sometimes they're not even close. And part of me respects the board's decision to leave that private because that's between you and Bob, but sometimes I think as well as if the fire department knew what was going on, there wouldn't be such animosity. But regardless, what I hear you guys saying is that we're not getting Chief Sims back. And if we're not gonna get Chief Sims back, these guys deserve a chief. And the supervisor has nominated somebody who's not only qualified, but highly respected within the community and the fire department. I don't understand why this has taken meeting after meeting after meeting to give these guys a chief. And I want to thank Dan Shanahan for stepping up and assisting all these months, and he has done a wonderful job, and I appreciate that, and I hear he's done a good job, and I wish he was here that I could thank him myself. But fortunately, we need a chief, and we need it now. And the fact that he's going to do it for the same price, Ernie, I'm surprised you didn't hit that 2-for-1 like that with the money. Really. I mean, he's not only qualified and willing to do it, but a 2-for-1. I don't know how it can get any better than that. And again, I want to thank these guys for everything that they do for this township. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time?
Brian Savalainen with UP Engineering. Just letting you know I'm in the audience if you have questions on item 8B, the local roads.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll move to board member comment. Board members wishing to make comment may do so at this time. Lynn, I'd like to start with you.
Nope, nothing right now, thanks.
Diana?
Nothing at this time.
Ernie?
No.
That was easy. Clerk Patari?
I do. The election went well last 2 weeks ago. We had about a 25% turnout, which is, I've looked at the history. The history statistics are in the packet. That's about what's normal on an off election year. So we're about where we are for the election. There will be one in August also. And later tonight, there's a budget amendment, and that is going to be $80,000. That's the first of our repayment in taxes to some businesses. So that's the first of a lot coming. So $80,000 is gone from our, I believe it's our general fund. So just think what we could have done with $80,000 that we're going to have to repay in taxes, and more to come.
Thank you. Trustee Pompo?
No.
Peter?
I'd like to just bring up a couple of things from our event committee meeting this afternoon, or this morning it was, 11:15. But it's kind of hard to, we'd like to look at the nice warm things rather than what we've seen this morning. But on Saturday, June 20th, from 9 to 1 in the morning, 9 to 1, we're going to have a 3-on-3 street hockey, road hockey tournament at the Lions Field over there at the hockey rink. This was postponed from before because of the weather, so now we can have it, but it's going to be road hockey. It consists of 8 teams, all ages, 20, 30-minute games, so it's going to be at the Lions Recreation Hockey Rink. That's going to be Saturday, June 20th. Then we go down a little farther on June 27th, another Saturday, we're going to have the Catch a Vision the car show in Cruz. That's going to be the 27th. And that's going to be in the parking lot of Applebee's. Then on August 1st, we're going to have Community Days again, or at the Lions Field. And I hate to even bring this one up, but December 2nd, we're going to have the lighting of the tree in Santa. So that's what we discussed at the events committee this morning. So we've got a lot of things going. Plus, I think there's a couple other things in there that we'd like to discuss. But if anyone has any ideas of something that they'd like to champion and bring it up to us and let us know. And also about the drywalling, we got the ceiling in the warming shed done, and we'll be working on the walls. So we're looking for a couple of drywallers, some painters later on. So if you're in the mood that you'd like to volunteer, we could sure use a little help over there. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Dennis? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I forgot to do my reports, but you'd
Oh, no,
be
go
up
ahead.
next. Okay. Don't want to be remiss in these. Planning Commission. We had a special use permit public hearing on the same property I mentioned to you last meeting, 160-acre property that was subdivided 4 and 5 times, so that took up most of our meeting. We did get a Lions Field update on the projects that are going on over there. We talked a little bit more about the lighting ordinance. If you remember, I mentioned to you about whose responsibility it was going to be to make the decisions on where the lights went. I think that's still going to be an ongoing discussion between planning and the board, although the ordinance says that it falls to the board, so I'm not sure how we can do that. It'll have to be delegated somehow to staff or one of the committees. And then we touched on the capital improvement plan. You've got that form in your packet tonight, and we'll probably talk about that later. And then I just came from the library meeting, which was actually kind of quick and easy. There was a youth services librarian report. The manager of that department said that the teen usage is increasing in the library, right before tests especially. They're finding a lot of kids in the library studying, which I thought was pretty neat. The cafe is relatively new down in the basement, and they're having some problems with people who are not patronizing the cafe sitting down there because it's so comfortable. So his people don't have any place to sit while they're eating, so they're going to talk about that at that board level. Or Jane Kennedy gave a quick report from the Township Advisory Council. She really didn't have too much to say other than the tax tribunal was the biggest part of their conversation at that board and what they're going to do about it, which was also included in the financial reports from the accountant. They expect a $50,000 shortfall already for next year's budget because of the tax tribunal. And they had $8,000, I think, that came back from the township already. They are having a budget work session to try to figure out, they have a 15-month year now, and they're trying to figure out how the tribunal is going to fit into that. So they're going to have a work session Wednesday, June 17th at 3 o'clock, and then they'll have their board meeting right after at 5. So I don't know if I'll get to both of those, but I'll at least get to the board meeting. And they're going to do a different kind of a fundraiser, and it's going to be, I thought I wrote it on the front, June. It's going to be at the former Union Grill. They're doing a pig roast, and all the proceeds will go to the library, just the general fund. It's going to be Saturday, June 6th, from 11 in the morning until 8 at night. And the Steinhaus family, which has the new restaurant downtown, is going to be putting that on. They're in the process of opening their business, or they're expecting maybe June or July, in the old Union Grill building. So I don't know if they're moving or if they're expanding. They're expanding? Okay. They're going to provide the food and the service. Ordock Brewery is going to provide a cash bar. They're selling tickets for $10 a piece or $12 at the door. They expect or hope to raise $5,000. And they'll have bands and everything. So they're kind of hoping it'll be an afternoon event for families. So I also gave Manager Gerard a copy of their flyer that they have out of their calendar of events. It's pretty amazing what they're planning on doing. They've got the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum of Science is coming up here for a couple hours, July 1st. I mean, there's tons of things that they're going to be doing. They're having a superhero day. They're having 2 superhero days. One, they're going to do the cartoon type guys, and another one, they're going to try to get as many members of the community who feel that they have a different job to participate. And they'll have like the fire department and the police department and EMS and those kinds, because kids are always excited about that. But they are looking for anyone else who feels that they are kind of a hero or have a hero job to come and talk to the kids. They thought that would be kind of interesting. And Lastly, one of the reports they gave was from the assistant library director. They've gotten a grant to digitize 12,500 pages of the Mining Journal. And back in the 1800s, they had a weekly edition of the Mining Journal rather than daily. So they're hoping to film, or, microfilm, somewhere from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and it will be submitted to the Library of Congress. And you can see some of what they will be submitting. It's called Chronicling America on the Library of Congress website. So they're pretty excited about that. They're going to start copying the pages. The Mining Journal has the original. It was probably microfiche back then, and that's what they'll use because the quality is so good. So Marquette, Michigan, and the county will be immortalized in the Library of Congress sometime by the end of this year, which is kind of interesting, especially for historians. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Just a couple comments. One, what Clerk Rattari touched on as far as the first refunds that we had to issue had to do with just 2 of the 12 stores that have refunds pending based upon the Michigan Tax Tribunal, and that's an $84,000 impact to our general fund. I don't remember the exact dollar amount that's going to come out of the fire department. But again, that's just 2 of the 12 stores, and that just goes back to the last 3 years of taxes that are being refunded. When it's all said and done, when we've paid out on all 12 stores, it's going to be about $200,000 out of our general fund, and $80-some thousand, $85,000, I think, out of our fire department, just in those refunds for those 12 stores. So it's a battle that now you can see why we fought it for as long and as hard as we did, because it has a drastic impact on a township of our size, on a township of any size. But when you look at what we could have done from a general fund perspective with $200,000, we can have an incredible impact on the 3,900 residents we have with that kind of money. There are still some grassroots groups who are working to try to figure out ways to maybe put some pressure onto local commercial enterprises who have availed themselves of what we certainly feel is a misinterpretation of tax law that continue to meet. One started off with the Peter White Public Library. It's a group called Save Marquette, Save Michigan. You can check out their Facebook page, but they're very active and still meeting. There's also another group that's been put together, and they've had a couple meetings so far that is really was being driven by the Labor Council of Marquette County, and it's good to see these grassroots groups looking at ways and trying to find ways to maybe convince some of the commercial enterprises that they should still fund their obligations to the community. But if you hear about them and you're interested at all, attend one of their meetings. I'm sure that I've been to several of their meetings. I think you got a dedicated group who understands it. It's kind of funny, last week we had a phone call from Market Area Public Schools wondering why they had to pay interest to us in addition to these refunds, and that didn't seem fair, and they wanted to know if we had waived the interest. We were able to explain to them what we tried to tell them for the last 3 years, is that interest doesn't come to us, and that if they want the interest waived, they would actually have to call the prevailing attorney in the case and see if they'd be willing to waive the interest on what was ordered from the Michigan Tax Tribunal. So I think even Marquette area public schools are starting to realize what a devastating impact the tax tribunal decisions have had, not only to Marquette Township, but the greater Marquette County. And again, it's just the tip of the iceberg. This is statewide, folks, and it's going to have devastating impacts to the state of Michigan as these refunds get issued. They start looking at the ones that have been stipulated, and we'll continue to fight it as best we can. Legislation is still pending in both the House and Senate. We do have Kevala and Casperson, our representatives, who are prepared to release it any day now, but my fear with the legislative fix is that they're going to try to plug some of the loopholes moving forward, but what's done is done. The money that's gone is gone forever, and we won't see that back. So it's just a new reality for us. I think it's unfortunate. I commend the board on sticking to it and fighting the good fight and taking it as far as we could, but unfortunately we did not prevail. But just kind of a heads up. Ernie?
Following up on the supervisor, on that 80,000, we're gonna lose that every year. You're never gonna get it back in that, so if you wanna comment on that.
Yeah, it's gone, it's gone. And, you know, in addition to the refunds, once it's down, it's down. We can't only bring it up. The Headley Amendment makes sure that we don't bring it up, whichever's less, the rate of inflation or 5%. So once you've taken a $10 million store and made it a $3 million store for taxing purposes, it'll remain as a $3 million store for all intents and purposes. Taxes are just gone, especially the hit. The biggest hit goes to the school aid, and I don't think people realize that, and I don't think MAP's fully understood that their sinking fund and their debt fund, they don't get help back from Lansing. Once that's gone, it's gone. And again, appreciate the board sticking to it and fighting the fight, but while I'm not ready to completely throw in the towel yet, we'll continue to provide information to these grassroots organizations as they try to fight it for us. Thanks. With that, we'll close board member comment. We're going to move to unfinished business. The first item on your agenda is agenda item number 8A, continued fire chief appointment. Has been made abundantly clear. We've had a lot of, Dan?
Before we continue with 8A, I have to, I've been informed that due to a comment I made on the April 21st board meeting, I have to claim a conflict of interest concerning item 8A, and therefore will not be involved with any discussions or votes, and/or votes pertinent to this.
Would somebody care to make the motion in that case to recuse trustee Pompo from deliberation and voting on agenda item number 8A?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comment? It does have to be a unanimous vote to carry through according to Michigan statute, so I would prefer if the clerk would do a roll call vote, please.
The motion maker is trustee Durant,
Yes.
trustee LaRue,
Yes.
trustee Truscott,
Yes.
treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
secretary is yes, and supervisor Limita.
Yes.
A question for the legal counsel. Does trustee Pompo vote on this one?
No,
Okay, so he is out of this vote also.
correct.
Okay, the motion carries with one abstention.
Thank you. Again, I guess I don't need to, by way of bringing it forward, I don't need to totally bring it up to the group that's here, because clearly you've heard public comment at the beginning. We've also certainly had some notoriety in the local media for this evening, and it did get uploaded earlier today into the online packet. So if you have an interest of anything we're looking at from a board perspective, I also put one of these packets into each board member's mailbox today. It's nothing new. All of the information that you have included in here has already been provided to you, but by way of getting through the packet, I wanted to make sure that all the information was provided. The first thing in your packet was the 2-page memorandum dated 4/16 that talked about my reason for deciding on my appointment of Ron DeMars as the consideration for the fire chief. The next thing in your packet was a 2-page memorandum from Fire Marshal DeMars in regards to his vision of whether or not he was the fire chief, but where he believes that the department should go. Also included was a response to the board from April 27th regarding the combined job description. Included, Lynn had asked some specific questions about the job description. I included that in your packet. There is a very large package of letters and emails that was received from various parties, both former and current firefighters, as well as concerned citizens in support of Ron DeMars as the fire chief. I included the job description for the fire chief in the packet, as well as Ron's both national and state certifications for his training. I think I've been pretty clear on why I believe that Ron is the best candidate of the available candidates for the fire chief's appointment, and therefore I would again respectfully ask the board to consider Rhonda Mars as my appointment to the fire chief's position for Marquette Township Fire Department. What's the board's pleasure? Would anyone care to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll support it.
We have motion and support. Board member comment, Lynn?
Appropriate since we were the most vocal. Not intended, though. Just a couple comments. The township's had a few issues the last 5 months, and this board has had a few issues the last 5 weeks. 6 years ago, the previous supervisor asked me why I ran for this board. He wasn't being smart, alecky, or anything. He was sincere. And I told him it was because of communication. I was writing a huge tax check every year for my business, and I didn't know where the money was going. And that bothered me, and I felt that I wasn't being communicated to well enough as a resident and a business owner. So that's why I got involved. Communication was something that I felt very strongly about, and when we had an issue come up not long after that, he said, well, how far are you going to push this communication issue? And I said, as far as it takes, whatever we can do to tell our residents what we're doing. We've expanded a lot in those 6 years with television and newspaper coverage, which is great. They've done a great job of following up with us. But I have a friend of mine who's been a salesman for many, many years. I've known him for 15 years. And he always had 2 things that kind of stuck with me. Presentation is important, and don't burn your bridges. And that kind of stuck with me because what it goes back to is communication. And being aware of what you say, being responsible for what you say. And he always said, control your mouth. I thought that was the best way to explain it. My issue 5 weeks ago with the way this was done was exactly that. That was not presented in the normal format that we usually get our information. I was expecting to receive more information that night that I didn't get. I had talked to Ron at length before that meeting, and I was fine with what he said. I agreed with him. I was anxious that he was willing to step up because I thought it would be a big job. I talked to him at length after that first meeting, and I was still fine with what he was saying, and he was fine with what I said. I've also gotten 13 or 14 comments back from various people who also were glad that I asked for more information. Not that they agreed or disagreed, they were supporting the marshal as being chief, but they were glad that I asked for more information. So that's all I was trying to do, was get the status of how we felt the position, the department was going to go forward. That's all I was worried about. It's about the township, and that's what a lot of the emails that we've gotten over the last few weeks have said. It's got to be about the township, and it was about the position, and that's all I cared about. And I wanted to make sure that if we had some kind of plan in place, direction, that the staff knew, that the firefighters knew, because they had a lot of unanswered questions, and I wanted to make sure if they went into it, they knew what they were getting to. And it's great that we've had so much correspondence from the department. I'm sure Ron feels gratified that he has the support he does from his employees and from the staff and from the board, I think. We'll see how everybody votes, but that's all I wanted to say. Just kind of explain a little bit more and tell you why I did what I did.
Thanks, Lynn. Brittany has a second. Comments?
Yes, I have some comments on that, too. If you go back to the last couple of meetings when it first came up, I was concerned with the procedure that was followed, and that was it. If you go back and look at the actual tapes in that, I never made a directive comment against the individual that was presented, nor the credentials that were put out there. I never said anything to that effect. Mine was a procedure that was followed, and I was concerned with that, because once you set up the procedures, you should follow them through for all entities within the township and that. I have no problem with the candidate. I never had any. I never addressed that on any meetings I was at and that, so if you look at going back in time, you look at that and look at what's been written in the paper and that, I get a little concerned with that, because it points back to the direction I was taking in that, and which I did not take, which I should say. As far as the job description, if you look at last meeting, I was talking about, it's quite intense, and that's what I was concerned with, is that can that be accomplished by that individual? I've talked to Ron since that point in time at length in that, and he thinks there should be no problem with that. So I would like to suggest, and take it for what it's worth, in 6 months or 8 months, take a look and see if it's overwhelming for one person to do it all and that. And if it is, then we as a board are going to have to go back and look and see if what we can do to help it all in that. But I have no problem moving forward with what we had. I was never against the candidate. I never spoke out against that. It was strictly the procedure that was followed. I thought it could have been done more professionally, and it just did not come out that way in that. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Ernie. Diana? Comments?
No, I just agree with Lynn and them. It's just the way that it came apart in the meeting and stuff. It was nothing against Ron, or if he was qualified. We all know he's qualified enough, and we all know he can do the job. It was just the way that it was handled at the meeting, and how it seemed like, we didn't have enough information.
Okay. Clerk Kachari?
Only comment I have is, I agree with the rest of the board. I think it's time to move forward and get this behind us, and then we got some bigger things to handle as we go forward here, so I'd like to get this behind us and move forward.
Thank you. Pete?
In today's business world, it's something that's been done time and time again. You cut back on one job, or you take a job and you combine it to others and stuff like that. So I really never had that problem. I knew and had faith in Ron that he would do it. I think we got the right person at the right time. So I think we should move around and approve of it. So.
Thank you. Well, I guess everybody knows how I feel since I made the appointment. Clearly, I think that from my standpoint, my original statement from a few meetings ago had to do with finding the best qualified candidate that we have, that we could have, and I believe that we had him under our own roof, and that was in Ron DeMars. Certainly his certifications are second to none. He clearly has the ability and the training and the know-how to be the chief. In fact, he was the former chief. So he does understand what the job entails. It's also the fact that, I think that the guy's reputation is, stands on its own. Certainly you've seen a tremendous amount of support from both current and former members that had a lot of high praise to put on Ron as a true professional. And when you're picking a fire chief, it's about professionalism, it's about leadership, and what you're really doing is you're choosing a leader, and if you get that right, the rest of it will fall into place. And it keeps the board from having to get too involved with the fire department when you've got a good leader. And I think Ron, clearly in my estimation, is that leader that we're looking for to move us forward, going out here. And I, again, apologize to the firefighters, because I know they've been in a state of limbo going back to December 19th, which is hard when your leader's missing. And hopefully after tonight, that position is filled and we can move forward. If not, we'll revisit it again, but we have a motion and a second. Is there any other comment? Seeing none, there's motion and a second to approve the appointment of Ron DeMars as the fire chief for Marquette Township Fire Department. If there's no other comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very much for your consideration. The next item on our agenda is 8B, Local Roads Rehabilitation Project Update. Brian, you may want to just jump up to the podium right away to answer any questions. And Manager Gerard, I'm going to turn that over to you as far as the update.
Well, where we are, board members, is what we had talked about several board meetings ago when Brian first approached us. We had engaged UP engineers and architects to review following the tax tribunal decisions and the shortfall that we ended up with of about $1.25 million as a result of those decisions over the 15 years, and ask them to take a look at what had been put together and see if there were any areas from an engineering and design standpoint that could potentially be reduced in cost or a different look taken at it. The whole objective was to determine if what we told the voters we were going to do if they approved the millage could still be done in that millage amount, and if not, what needed to change, and did we need to go back to the voters and talk to them about it later this year. I gave UPEA the charge of looking at that. They came back, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, and indicated that one of the issues that we had originally cited for design and engineering was likely too high in our estimates, and that they felt that they could significantly reduce that, which they did in the initial look. Then during the review process, also the price of petroleum had dropped significantly, as we all saw at the gas pumps, and that had an impact on the cost of blacktop, which was a significant cost in the original proposal. So we did go out and authorize UPEA to go forward and put together a specification package for the entire project, put it out for bids, which they did, and Brian will be here to speak to that this evening. He estimated that preliminary information indicated probably a $500,000 reduction in cost just on blacktop alone. He was a little off on that. It came out to be $600,000 less through the bids. But I am not going to take any of the thunder away from him. I'll let Brian go and speak basically about what I think you'll see, what you saw in your packet basically is that what they are recommending to the board this evening for consideration is actually an expansion of road construction to 12.5 miles, and including some other things like bit curb and a few other things, as opposed to the 7.5 miles that we originally thought we could do. So with that, I will turn it over to Brian and let him walk you through it.
Thank you, Randy. We've been here a few times now. I apologize for missing the last meeting. I didn't realize that it had switched to Monday night. And I feel a lot better now after seeing our bids come in here too. So we did receive bids. What we had done is, as we've discussed before, we looked at, rather than the first third of the roads going under construction this year, we tried to identify everything possible that wouldn't require utility upgrades and to go into a package. So what we ended up doing is we went out for bids on about 70% of the local roads. Based on the original estimates, actually, that you don't see here, 70% would have been in the neighborhood of $4.5 to $5 million. We received 3 bids. Payne and Dolan was the low at $2.4 million. Baco came in really close. They were 2.5, and Lindbergh's was third at 2.7. So it was very competitive bidding. Our engineer's estimate, after we had re-looked at everything, we were hoping that we'd get about $3 million. So, you know, we basically cut, I think, almost $2 million out of what was anticipated in the roads. So does a couple of things. It gets us, I think, really close to fitting in the initial budget that was there. There's probably about $2 million left now from the original plan here that could be used for that last 30% or so of road work that'll need to be done. And there's still some work there in determining how that all is handled and whether or not we do utilities or what we do in that realm. But One more thing that we are doing yet this year is that we're still putting together a crack seal and seal coat package, which we're talking in the neighborhood of a couple of $100,000 to get that type of work done. So what we've recommended to the board, it looks like we're in a neighborhood of about $3 million when you look at construction, crack seal, the engineering involved, and some contingencies in there to do the package. So what we're recommending is that you award the contract to Payne and Dolan for the bid amount of $2.4 million plus. We're also recommending that you include an allowance in there right now for us to work with the roads committee, the staff, and everybody else of $150,000 initially to look at doing some additional improvements. And what that's for is that we've been receiving comments for the last month and a half from residents, and there's areas, and I've talked before regarding stormwater issues. There's some paving areas. There's a potential cul-de-sac, and there's a couple other things that we still want to look at. The other thing, the staff had looked at trying to make the community a little more walkable in some of the areas, and this initial package, we had narrowed the roads down to what they are right now. We might be able to bring some of that stuff back into the picture. So our staff right now is planning to meet with the roads committee on June 2nd to go through a list of the roads, and we will be providing to the public what these roads are. It's going to take us a little more time to develop all that. We've really rushed in. We put together what was called a log job, which is we went through and we got as close as we possibly could with the estimate of the materials and the things that need to go in. So when you look at the second part of the recommendation, what we've done, we've revised our engineering tasks to complete some additional design. We need to do more field work and surveying. We'll be doing construction surveying, and then we'll also be doing construction oversight. So that budget number, that would bring our total for 2015, I think the 220,000 or 230, I don't recall. That original budget was $675,000 to do that engineering. So we actually, you know, as we said, we're doing that for about a third of what was budgeted for these roads. So we still will need to talk to the county and look at getting the bonding going and determine, you know, what we're going to look at. Right now, we're recommending that you look at about a $3 million project for this year. I don't think you need to make that decision yet, but we do recommend you award the Payne and Dolan, and that you allow us to move forward with our revised task 300.
Thanks, Brian.
Anyone wants to add anything?
Randy?
Just before the board begins your consideration, a couple of points that I think you also need to consider. I do support Brian's suggestion that we award the bid to Payne and Dolan primarily to lock in the price for the blacktop. As you've noticed, petroleum is starting to go back up again. We need to lock that price in to maintain that savings. I have had Dulcie take a look at our revenues for 2016 and beyond based upon the tax tribunal issues, what we have in hand currently, and what we anticipate may occur, and we're still taking a very conservative approach on this because we don't know where that's going to go in the future years with growth. We are projecting a continuation of about a 3% a year growth as opposed to the 7 to 10% that we've been experiencing in revenues because of that. We do have some fairly large construction projects that are in process currently. Our estimation is right now, predicated upon the figures that Brian's team has put together, that with that 1.5 mils by year 15, if we go forward with the project as we designed it and as Brian currently is presenting it to you in a phased approach, basically two parts. In other words, bonding this first part separately and then bonding the second part later. We're estimating that by year 15, our shortfall should only be about $13,000 to $14,000. Which we should be able to cover over that period of time ourselves. We have a history, if we continue to do this in our budget, of putting aside $50,000 a year for roads, specifically for roads, and we can preserve that to cover any of that shortfall over that 13 years. Now, that does not include, as Brian just mentioned, we still have to go back now and talk bonding through the county. Those costs are not included in this yet, so we still have to work that out. So I'm being cautiously somewhere between pessimistic and optimistic here from a budget standpoint, that it looks like what we told the residents we could do, we're probably going to do a little better from the standpoint of actual construction. There's a little more mileage of construction in this process. We anticipated we were going to be about $1.25 million short. They brought us back about $600,000 in the cost of the blacktop, plus about another $200,000 to $300,000 in the engineering costs. So we're getting very close to making up that $1.25 million. So I don't think the board is going to need to go back to the voters later this year to ask them for an increase in millage. I think with what we have in hand now, again, depending upon what the bonding costs turn out to be, and we don't know that yet, I think we're very close to being able to do what we told the residents we were going to do. A little bit different order. Some of the roads may be treated a little bit differently than what we originally thought, but we should still have about a 25-year project coming out of this. So the only thing I'd like to have the board do tonight is to commit to that portion, right now, the first portion with Payne and Dolan, to preserve that blacktop price and hold on the rest of it until we get the bonding costs in.
Randy, can you give us an estimate of where you think the bonding costs are going to come in as a percentage?
The original discussion was around 3%, but it was a compounding 3% over the 15 years. So we're hopeful that if we break it into two phases and take this smaller portion around $3 million as opposed to the full $7.5 million, that only gave us about $6.5 million of actual construction money. So there was about over that time frame with attorney costs and bonding fees and everything else, there was a significant amount. We're trying to reduce that by breaking this down.
Okay, thank you. Board member questions or comment? Ernie?
I have a couple. Are we still talking about trying to get the roads done in 3 years?
The target, yes, we are attempting that, and Brian can address this, because remember, we broke out what we're doing first. All of this 12.5 miles that are being, well, roughly 20 miles, 12.5 miles of reconstruction, and the rest, about 20.7 miles total with surface treatment, is basically going to address that. So I believe we are.
Good, Ernie.
Okay, looking at, I'm no engineer, so going through all these prices, a lot of times it's just kind of mind-boggling trying to figure out where they all go in that. But starting with number one, the mobilization, looking at all three of them, the engineer's estimation was $270,000. Payne and Dolan came in at $66,000. The other two came in very close to what the estimate was. So the question is, how can they come in so different than the other two?
Typically, mobilization is kind of a catch-all item. It's intended mainly for trucking cost and unforeseen things. It includes some of their bonding, some of their insurance requirements, and things like that. What some contractors do, I don't think we set a maximum or a minimum. Sometimes we'll do that. Typically, you'll see anywhere between 5 and 10% included there. But some people like to load up their mobilization costs a little bit, because when you're doing construction, the way specifications are set up, you get most of your mobilization money in your first pay request. So they will top load it. But one thing you need to look at too is that Payne and Dolan actually is on the end of one of our major reconstruction projects, which is right to their plant. So when you start looking at that as well, they're right here. The other thing, that the advantage that they ended up having over Baco was that Baco and them actually both had, I think, $55 a ton, which I haven't seen that price since like 1995. It's crazy. But the one difference was we've got to crush and shape the old material on a lot of the roads, and Payne and Dolan has that equipment. Baco usually will need to get that, and that might be where some of the mobilization was too. So sometimes contractors just shuffle numbers around, and that's an opportunity and a place where they can get it. So.
And also, one of the other things with the mobilization is that if you set up and you're going continuously from road to road, you don't have to take your equipment down. You're just continuously moving. So mobilization is a one-time event as opposed to a multiple-time event. And when we put the original specifications together, the original package with the road commission, they had no idea where the contractors were going to be coming from. So we estimated that on the high side. As Brian mentioned, you know, some of these companies are not local. The ones that bid, luckily, are local. If they had to come from outside the area, that's part of the mobilization, is moving all of their equipment.
Another question on number 14, shoulder, CL2. I'm wondering if Payne and Dolan made a mistake, or however it is, because you come up with a bid price of 1 cent, and for $109.88, when you look at the other two, they both bid $1 for $10,988. I'm just wondering if there's some kind of typo.
No, that's, again, that's a little bit of a game that contractors will play, and what you're looking at there is just outside of the blacktop, there's a little bit of gravel that gets placed out there, and that's what that is. But what happens also in these, and you'll look, the two paving contractors there, both were, even Baco was at $1 on that, and a lot of that operation is what's called windrowing. When they're actually grading, that material's starting to build up to create and help that class 2. So it's very minimal amount of extra gravel they put in, and it's just a little more shaping. And contractors that do this all the time for paving operations, they understand that, and it's just something they're, okay, this is gonna be one we're not worried about, and maybe we'll get the project here.
So
And you notice they, it was like $10,000 to $100 there.
I can say the same thing for number 30, the curb slope. Baco had a penny, but the rest of them had $1.
Yeah,
Same.
and that's the same type of thing. The thing we really watch out here for is when there's a quantity that's low, say we had only 10 of one item, and all of a sudden there's a real high number at that. That's what'll trigger us to look at, okay, did we miss something? Is there a lot more of this item? And that's usually where you get more concerned. When we see those pennies and that's I've seen rock excavation come in at a penny before, and that's only been, you know, sometimes we throw in what are called miscellaneous quantities, thinking that we may run into something, and contractors will do more investigation, and, you know, they're not going to hit any of this, so they don't want this item to affect their final bid, so they'll throw a penny in there or something. They take the chance if we hit it, then they've got to do it for that. I actually saw that happen one time. So
I think the last one I had was traffic control. Payne and Dolan happened to be quite a bit higher, almost $15,000 or dollars more than the other two. And that,
what I would say there is that's where that mobilization cost comes in. You know, they're quite a bit lower on that. They looked at their traffic control, you know, a little bit differently, and some of the other contractors put that in there. So all three of these were very qualified contractors, and we would have recommended any one of them if they were low.
I have no question. I just kind of looking through all the figures here, and some of them just bounced out.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, and I've been doing 25 years. I've seen some crazy numbers all around, you know, and we always go through them and compare them and look for those triggers that, well, what did we miss here, or what did they miss? So.
Randy?
Just to kind of put it into perspective so everybody can understand what's going on here, it's just like taking your list that you want on your new car that you're buying with the exact same equipment, and you get different prices from different dealers. It's depending on where they want to take their profit from. I mean, that's pretty much what you're dealing with.
I think the other thing, you got $150,000 there that you can play with, so I don't know if the contractors were aware of that 150 that you're looking at either.
We had conversations with them all, and they all understand that it may grow or shrink depending on what we were going to get. And the reason we're recommending that number is just that, again, we've seen some citizens' comments and just staff. I know we've talked to Jason a little bit in terms of the intent of widening the road, and rather to come back right away and going, okay, we're going to do this, let's extend this, we need another $90,000, that we will update you on that when we come here. You'll notice in the recommendation that we say anything above and beyond that, we would come back and ask you to go, let's change order this or work that. However, we will continue to update you. I won't miss another meeting unless you change it to Monday again on me. but we'll be here, and we'll keep you informed on what we're getting done, and, you know, let the public know what's happening, because they're asking questions, and I'm just trying to keep everybody informed here. And
on that 150,000, I noticed reading through here, that's during construction. Who are you be working with in the township when that dollars are gonna have to be utilized in that?
What we're looking at, it would be your staff and your roads committee together. And then Randy will direct us which way he thinks that should go. If it should come here, we'll come here with it. You know, there might be something that's less than that, and it's still, you know, this really wasn't part of the road thing, and we're trying to do an extra 100 feet or something here. Maybe we should bring that to everyone's attention and let that happen, so.
Other questions? Pete, go ahead.
Brian, when I went through the bid, and, you know, who's high, who's low, I took my highlighter, went through there, you know what I got? Nice little piece of paper. It didn't mean much to anyone who would look at it, who does not get into it.
Yeah.
What I want to know, and what we promised the residents, that we're going to take care of the roads and correct it in its deficiencies. Drainage is a very big problem. I mean, I can name off 10 streets right now that you got a problem with sand and that. And that's what I hope you, when you come back to the for a meeting, you're going to tell us what you're going to do on Pacific. What are you going to do on Woodridge? What are you going to do on Vanderwood, on Norwood, when we got drainage problems, and how are we going to correct it? How are you going to correct Huron going down over the slope there? You know.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And don't
what-
forget Sherry, so we have to take care of Sherry.
That's exactly what our, you know,
Yeah.
engineering, you know, adjustment needs to be too, is we need to look at the, one thing that happened that we didn't bring up in talking with the county, they did have some concerns with some of the subgrade. We actually went out and did soil borings. We didn't tell you we were gonna do that, but we felt it was necessary to do that, so we did. And what we found out on Forestville Road turned out to be true, in that that blacktop is not on a stable gravel base. It's on more cobble material that if we take that blacktop off, we lose that base, and that could have been a real problem. So what we ended up doing, and you don't see all of this in front of you, but we talked to the county of how did they handle this on other jobs and how have we done it. That particular road, we're gonna leave the blacktop as is. We're gonna put 6 inches of gravel over that, and then we're gonna pave so we're beefing that road up drastically, and that's, for us to do that, we need to go out and do more engineering and in terms of how that's gonna spread out over the road and make sure that's handled properly. So, but we knew that then going in, so we actually added those beefed up sections and quantities based on the best guess we could. So we feel pretty comfortable with what's out there, and we took a lot of those items in. We had several meetings with the county. You know, we'll be tracking all the dollars per each road so that they can put it into their, into the Act 51 road millage that they need to keep track of on an annual basis too. So with us having to do that for them, we'll be developing those same maps so that the community will see exactly which roads are being done and what's targeted. So what's left to be targeted, you'll see that as well. There's some projects you already had identified for some water and sewer work. We think we can sneak some of those in yet. And then there's the question of maybe some water funding and things like that. And that's all included in this year's engineering dollars.
And talking with the residents, we try to explain the changing of the project. You know, I think we would do more chip and seals this year because the price is so low. And also, we have some sewer projects that we're gonna put off and try to get in there too over the next couple of years. So when we do put the road in, we're not going back and dig it up for sewer.
Exactly.
So when
'cause
they
you're
sort of
bonding,
understand that, as long as we're out telling them exactly what we're trying to do, and that's what I want from you is that we have to sort of explain to ourselves, because we promised them that this is part of our project because of the county owns the roads and we're doing the financing and stuff like that, and we want them to be sure that we're doing the right thing for them.
Exactly,
So-
and that's why we're here, and that's why we'll have a presence, you know, throughout the process.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Ernie, another question?
Yeah, moving forward here, when we originally looked at, we had 100, 200, and 300.
Yeah.
thing. Now we're talking about 300, increasing it by about $90-some thousand. Now, that's gonna take a separate motion to do that end of it, over and above the one for going out for the, so.
Correct. You would have to amend, basically what you'd have, essentially, you could do it in one motion, basically, to accept the recommendation, because it is included in the recommendation from Brian, is to go forward with awarding the bid to the low bidder, and also authorizing at the bottom of the page is authorizing them to go onto phase 300.
But we authorize 300, I think we also have to indicate the increase. to
Correct.
300 from last
Not to
year.
exceed,
Right.
that not to exceed. Mhm. Now, the big thing that the residents need to recognize, as Trustee LaRue was talking about, is the major change that's occurred here is a shift, basically, in the first, now year and a half, roughly, is going to be addressing primarily those segments of road that do not require any kind of subsurface utility work, that it's basically just road work. And that's where you're seeing the shift, different from what the original map was. The second part of this would be those roads where we're either extending utilities or there are utilities that need to be replaced. And that's where the water projects that we talked about may come in. Kirk will be pursuing Drinking Water Revolving Fund financing for that portion of it, for the water replacement. Now, if you take up the water line, you take up part of the road, that part of the road would be replaced in the water project. But that means the board has to go forward with the water project. So that's what we're working on, and that's why that's been delayed to 17, 18, because it takes a year to get through that funding process. So that's what the residents would see. They'd see work on about roughly 20 miles of road, a little more than 20 miles of road, but it would be those roads that do not require any of the subsurface work, as Brian mentioned.
Other questions? Lynn?
Actually, he's answered quite a few of them, and I saw the same problems on the, not problems, but strange numbers on the bid, but because the bottom line was real similar, I figured that's what they were doing. We've seen a few of these before, but I wasn't sure. These are new people. So I guess my focus then is on the whole bonding millage part of it. How, I'm thinking, what if? What happens if we find that there are utility projects that need to be done? Do they stop what they're doing on a particular road and go to another one then because there's something coming up?
No, realistically, what happens, and we expect that will occur in some areas where they're working on the roads, we'll find a juncture or a box or a valve or something that has failed or fails during the project or is coming up, on replacement, and we do those. So that comes out of that reserve fund, the replacement and improvement fund that Kirk has in his utility budget. That's the same thing we did on Werner. Remember, as we were going through the Werner project, when that was redone, when they discovered that there were some lines that once they got them uncovered that looked pretty questionable, he went into that fund, that replacement and improvement fund, and replaced those, and we'll be doing the same thing on those. I'm not saying there won't be any subsurface work, because as we're going through some of these roads, even though there's not utility work, there may be base work that needs to be done, so that segment of road would be taken up. And that was one of the differences from the original plan. The original plan had an entire road section that was going to be totally reconstructed. But when the engineers went in and actually looked at those roads, we were doing it from maps and from Pazer ratings. When they went and actually looked at the roads, there were sections that didn't need to be total reconstruct. They just needed to be surface restorations, and then other sections were total reconstruct. That's where some of this difference came from.
So how does the financing then work with the second phase of the project, especially since that's tied to millage, that, it's like you start a project and then you find out that there's more and more and more. I'm not so much worried about how the millage part will cover those expenses as where do we get the money from to do that?
That's the bonding. Basically, the way this works is
Totally,
the
okay.
millage has been approved to be collected over 15 years. That will be a regular collection over that 15 years. That doesn't give us the money in the first 3 or 4 years to do the project. That we bond the entire project and then
Whole thing.
use the millage. The entire project is funded up front.
Okay, not the two phases.
No, it'd be 2 phases. This
But
project,
fund-
this project, this roughly $3 million would be funded in one bonding. Okay, and that'll start going forward. Now, the second part of it will be somewhere in that 2 million range ballpark is what we're estimating that would come out of the millage. Now, that'll be offset by whatever comes out of the water department, out of their replacement improvement and out of the construction money. So that's where the difference comes in. But the 1.5 mils will continue over the 15 years. Now, our projection is, as I said, by year 15, that it should almost be a wash in year 15, or we'll have to put a little bit more in out of the general fund. And what I intend to do is to preserve that $50,000 every year that we do to cover that shortfall.
Okay.
Other questions?
You mentioned a motion, excuse me.
Dan, go ahead.
Just to,
Go ahead.
No, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
One of you.
just to get the blacktop taken care of. Is that what we're talking about, or we're talking about the whole rehabilitation project?
No, we're talking about the first phase, basically. The first phase is the construction of that roughly 20.7 miles, but it's preserving that lower price on blacktop for that entire period of time, even though it's going to go beyond when prices might go up.
But is it for the 2.4 million that he's got right
Yes.
Yes, award the.
Well,
low bidder.
it's about, it's roughly 3 million by the time you add everything else on top of
The
it.
bigger thing is the award of the 2.4 to Payne and
Correct.
Dolan to tie that in. That
'Cause we're locking
sets-
down the
What they're
contract
looking
now.
at doing, just so you know, they're looking at August for most of their work. The
Start.
chip and seal stuff that we're looking at going out for bids on that, I think Friday? Yeah. Probably Monday.
No,
Well,
not Monday, Tuesday.
That'll happen first, because of the timing. It's better to do that in the warmer months, so that'll
Yeah.
probably be going on in July.
And this part of the project will go probably most of the way through 16, this portion of it, before it's completed. So that, what you're doing is preserving that blacktop price, even though over that period of time, prices are expected to go up.
So what we're recommending, you would award to Payne and Dolan for 2.4. You know, we can consider the 150 at another time. Doesn't have to be now. We're just recommending you do at some point, so we don't come back with every item. And then our contract adjustment, so we can keep working on the design so that we're ready to go in August.
But if we make the motion to accept the recommendation as proposed, that covers all of it.
Yeah.
Right. Dan, go ahead.
Okay, my concern basically wasn't the bidding process, actually. My concern was, and I spent time going between your proposal and the initial thing that the township came up with before the millage vote, trying to see if every road that was in the township's millage vote thing was obviously in yours. And I have to admit, I had a heck of a time doing it. And I don't really know if they were all there. I gave up after about 3 hours. So I'm going to ask you, basically, was every road that is in the township?
Every road that was in the township millage is included in the estimates that we have in there. The 20 miles, we have a very detailed internal log that we've done all of those numbers. That's how we had to generate those numbers. We will have that at the June 2nd meeting for the road committee, and we'll have that here for the public so they see that as well. So that's all in there. There's just, I'm amazed our staff was able to get this out right now in the amount of time. And I wish that I had a big map right now that showed everything there. It just, we were really trying to find out if these numbers were gonna come in like this, and we needed to get those pinned down soon. And that's what we concentrated on, and I think we achieved that.
Okay, well, and like Ernie, I'm not an engineer either, so my question's going to be here, going through all of this. The first year, 2015, basically about 11 miles of road in the 2015 per the township fix was under reconstruction, and per your fix was under crush and shape. So my question being, I know when we talked about this many times before that we wanted to keep our roads at a 20-year fix, I assumed that a reconstruction would make the road good for 20 years. But now that we've changed it to a crush and shape, is that making the road 20 years down the road?
A crush and shape is a 20 to 30 year type of lifestyle. Actually, and I talked about this a little bit before too. There's some misconception here in terms of what was considered a reconstruction. An actual reconstruction is like a 40 to 50 year deal, and that's where you go right down to 2 foot below the grade. You replace all the subgrade, all of those items like that. Those were never in the original numbers, so that total reconstruction kept getting thrown around. What a crush and shape is, that is similar to the reconstruction that was being referred to in the county's numbers. We've worked with the county. We went back through their stuff. We got their numbers, and that's the way that was adjusted. The whole intent here is to get 20 to 30 more years out of this. The next thing you should be doing to these particular roads is around that 20-year period, you're gonna start doing that crack sealing. That we should probably be doing some of that before, but then there's maybe a chip seal or something that gets you 25, 30, 35 years. Really what it comes down to now is the maintenance that you do on these roads moving forward and not letting them get out of hand.
So if you have a crush and shape or an overlay, and you go there and all of a sudden find out, say that you have a sewer pipe that is leaking and over the amount of years has now pushed the road up, now you're no longer into a crush and shape, but now you're into a
Yeah,
reconstruction.
You're in reconstruction, you got a utility like that. And that's why when we looked at it, you have, in the original plan, there was roads called out that didn't address those particular issues. You got some water and sewer mains that are getting near the end of their life. And there's the possibility, you get joint separation, people's water laterals break, and what starts happening, if you would've just went ahead and did those jobs right away too, there's a good chance that those start breaking. That pavement you just put on this year, 3 years from now, you're going in there and Kirk and his guys are digging holes every 300 feet up the road. And it's like, why didn't you do the road now? And those are when those happen. So what we identified was these roads that we have listed don't have those aged sewer. Doesn't mean that it's not gonna happen. I mean, things happen all the time. But using history, logic, and when things need to be maintained and replaced, that's what we used in redefining which road should be done in this project.
Okay, my other concern basically is under the water funding, $3.2 million to do the water projects. And I realize that if they do a water project, that they're gonna be fixing the roads, so that would alleviate some money from us. Unfortunately, with the $3.2 million and we have to go through water funding, we're gonna have to borrow on that also. And I guess my biggest question is gonna be where are we gonna get the money to pay for all that? Which isn't your concern, that's our concern.
Well, your staff is looking into that, and there's different sources. There's revolving fund, there's rural development funds available. You do have, some room in your budget to do something. Kirk does stuff all the time. You right now have a sewer project that's going on Vandenboom, which is a road that we're doing. So, there's bits and pieces that last 7.25 miles that's there. I'm thinking there's probably in the neighborhood of about 2 miles that are kind of already in the books, and there's at least a mile, I think, that's in there that doesn't have any utilities, and if we phase that out right, we could probably add that on even to this year's contract if we needed to, and we're getting that down. So Kirk has been working with some of our staff that specializes in rural development and water funding. That's not my specialty, but we have staff that do that, and our staff's been sitting down and trying to do that. Now we're gonna dig more into that as we move forward. So we wanna have that plan too.
Well, then my final comment would be, I would have to make sure that our attorney is in agreement that with what we have here, we do not have to go back to the voters before I would approve the initial funding to Payne and Dolan, because if we have to go back, that would be kind of a waste of time, so.
Randy?
Just before Roger jumps on that last question, just a couple of comments. Trustee Pomper brings up some very real concerns, and they're concerns that I have as well. And one of the things that is going on right now, and Dave Wiegand and I have been talking about it, Dave with the road committee are going through and doing exactly what Dan, you spent 3 hours doing. They're doing the same thing, and I think they've already been in contact with Brian. Dave might have been. He talked to me last Friday, I think it was. But at any event, they're doing that. They're going through making sure that all of those road segments are addressed and are identified in the plan. So that is going forward. Second thing is you're right. There are places. Sherry Johnson raised it at the last meeting, and the issue that she's got, that's a water main. That's a water main issue that's being pushed up by the frost. We did go take a look at it. Same thing in a couple of other places. So Kirk is aware of those, and those are things he's trying to deal with. The concern that I expressed at prior meetings is that if we go forward with that second phase, you are talking about partnering basically with a water project, and that may have an impact on residents. We are looking at two different sources of funding, at least two. One is the state's Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund, which we've used in the past, and the other is USDA financing, which is over 40 years. And basically that, in Kirk's opinion, would be, it's not a guarantee that we're going to get it, and if we don't, then that's another problem we'll have to deal with for that second phase in terms of how we address those roads in that second portion. But if they are awarded, that, in Kirk's opinion, would not have a significant impact on rates because he has 40 years to pay that back, that portion of the loan, over a longer period of time. So I think those were three of the questions that Dan asked. Roger, yours.
The language.
Yeah, we're okay going forward with the millage so long as we are dealing with the same roads that were in the original request, and it's my understanding that there has been an ongoing emphasis on that and determining that. If we can deviate in the nature of what we do. For example, we can, if it was a total, and I realize total reconstruct is a misnomer, but we can change the scope of what we do on those roads, I believe, and still be in compliance with the original ballot language. We can change the order of those even, but we should be including all of the original roads because the ballot proposal essentially says that it's for the purpose of repairing, maintaining, and improving local roads designated in the Marquette Township Local Roads Rehab Program. And that's where we designated them, so we should be doing the same, including all of those same roads, and we are within the bounds of our, what the millage proposal was by doing that.
I think from a board standpoint, Brian, what would help to allay some of those fears, especially about we don't want to misrepresent the project. When we sold it to the voters, had them come in and decide where they want to do it, we showed them maps and said, this is 2015, this is 2016, this is 2017 construction. And I think we'd like to see something like that again so that we can actually show residents when their road is going to get fixed, because one of the reasons that they supported it overwhelmingly like they did, over 70%, was the fact that they were able to find out, how does this impact me? And that is going to clearly change based on what we're doing now. So hard would it be, or how soon could the board have something like that to be able to look at, to where we can see a phase in the project?
I think by, like I said, by June 2nd, we want to have that for the road committee. That's the thing that we're concentrating on now. We've got our other bid spec about ready to go out. So that's what we intend to show, and we'll have maps available again for you. Those are the exact maps that we used to do that. And then we found out there was a list that may have had some stuff, so we went into the list. So we've done that. We feel very confident that everything is covered. The one thing to keep, based on the numbers that came in, you could do all the roads the way you intended to do them. You didn't tell the residents you're gonna fix the water and the sewer, you said you're gonna do the roads. What's left in the roads, we can add it by change order and be under the $5 million, pave them, and hope that the utilities last another 15 or 20 years. We're just recommending that you don't do that right now because we don't think it's a good idea on those segments of road. You know, so that's kind of the different character there. It doesn't mean you can't. You know, if you can't find the funding for the roads for next year, we look at doing a change order at the end of the year and pave them all. There's enough, the way that the dollars are there, you could do that right now.
Okay.
It's not a good fallback, but.
Pete? You can say that, but we didn't tell them that. We said we'd fix the road and we wouldn't go back and tear it up.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
But talking with the people, you know, out there, the residents, and I trying to explain as much as we can explain it. Majority of them are okay with it. Just tell them that, you know, because of the cost and some of the construction that we found out over the last couple of hard winters, that we're gonna have to go and dig in, and then we'll pave it. You know, but the only one question I have after I get done with it, when's it gonna start? So I'm asking you, if everything goes right with approval of this, when will they see somebody doing something with roads?
Most likely after the 4th of July, you'll start seeing chip sealing going on in that, and then it'll be what we're hearing right now, early August, when you'll start seeing the heavier operations. You might see some of the culvert replacements and that happening earlier. We've still got to sit down with Payne and Dolan and work those out. Those are things we want to incorporate in those maps so that we know, okay, this is the target we're designating in August, this is September. So, you know, if you give us a little time to, you know, pull everything together here, we'll do that. Our staff will go, we can have a public meeting if you want. If you want to have a forum on this sometime, you know, in a month or two to explain the whole process, we'll gladly sit here and make that the meeting. And we can show, you know, what's going on with each and every road and what it is.
That would be a very good idea.
Yeah, and
We
we're
don't have
more
to have the
than willing to do
18 meetings we had before, but just one good one. So they,
Yeah.
if they're concerned, advertise it and have them come in and they can see.
Yeah, and we'll gladly do that.
As long as we understand, because we're the ones that have to go out and talk to them when they hit you in the street or something, so.
They
All right.
call us too, though, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions?
Just one.
Lynn?
I have a request, I guess. Can you, at some point, give us some kind of single or 2 or 3 pictures of crack sealing and full redone, and just a sketching so we kind of know what you're talking about?
Sure,
And when you
we'll,
throw those terms out, then we've got that picture. I'm a visual.
Yeah, we can do that.
Some,
We'll
you know,
leave-
not a
we'll-
book, just a couple
No,
little.
we'll even blow it up on a map where you'll see this is the type of repair. That's something
Are
pretty
they-
easy for us to do.
Are they in your specs?
There's no photos in there.
Okay.
Be great.
Any other questions? Ready? Yep.
I'll make the motion that we award to Payne and Dolan the road rehabilitation project in the amount of $2,422,965.98. Do you want me to continue with the other 2 parts?
No.
And that a contingency allowance of $150,000 be set up for unforeseen conditions. And that the construction administration oversight number 300 be amended from 50,000 to 145,000.
I'll second that.
More comment? Seeing none? Lynn?
One more question. Did I remember that the road commission has Ontario on their scope at some point in the
Part of
next
it.
few years?
Down to Allen Street from Warner.
They
to
will
Allen.
be, this year, they'll be doing from Werner to Allen.
So this is going to get incorporated in with theirs?
This is not part of ours. No, it's not part of this project. They're doing that separately.
So we're not working on Ontario? They're
No.
going to do whatever they're doing? Okay.
Correct. And then next building season, they anticipate doing from Allen to Wright.
Okay.
We are also working with the county on that road though, so we're aware in terms of traffic control and that, so.
Okay.
Dennis, the design that they're gonna do is the same as what our plans are gonna do, correct? This
That
width
was
of the
done
road and
actually-
stuff like that?
That actually included water main. as
Yeah,
well.
but I mean, the width of the road and the walkways
They're
and
putting
that.
back what was basically there, I believe. Is it wide? That's gonna include walkways on it.
All right,
One
that's all.
side.
Safety strip.
Are they doing a crushing shape there?
No, that's complete reconstruction,
okay.
and that's what a true reconstruction is. You're doing water main and everything with that particular project. So. It's also a real heavy traffic carrier, and that's what that needs.
Because that's where one of our biggest problems is, coming off of Moran and off the St. Christopher Church, the water runs. That's where some of the problems, so that's why I want to make sure that they're going to do the same
Yeah,
project
when
as
is
we're
that going
talking
out
about.
For bids, you know?
Yeah, just one difference. Just one difference there. That section of Ontario is actually a truck route. That's a designated all-season truck route from Wright to Werner and then from Werner to Commerce. So that's why the road commission is doing that on their own.
Yeah, that'll, I think being August letting, construction may not happen till spring on that, but it'll be out for bids here shortly, and but that's an MDOT job. It goes through a lot more stringent types of administration.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation from UPEA, including with the amounts noted by Treasurer Johnson. If there's no other comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. The next item on your agenda is 8C, Continued Recreation Committee Recommendation for Lions Field Recreation Improvements. Mr. Springer is here to share some words of wisdom with us.
Mike Springer, Usenis Road. The Rec Committee met prior to this evening's board meeting. Unfortunately, only 3 of the 5 members could be there tonight. And it's a good time to announce that our regularly scheduled meeting of June 16th has been moved to June 19th so we can get more members there. So please take note of that. No decision regarding internal parking was made at our meeting tonight, although we are continuing to look into that. I know Jason McCarthy polled some other municipalities about parking spaces dedicated for different types of facilities that you have in a park, and we will put this on the top of our next agenda for the Rec Committee to look into additional parking. There's some other issues, though, that we have to take care of first. One of them, of course, is that we need to get that seeded, and we need to get that in shape for the season, which has already started at the park. Renee Leo from Conservation District attended our meeting tonight. The Conservation District will provide all the trees and the shrubberies that we need at the park, and it's free of cost. In addition to that, North Star Academy has volunteered to have students come over and help plant those. Now, North Star gets out on June 5th, so that has to happen real soon. Next week, we're going to try to schedule a on-site visit and plan planting. And as soon as I've got the schedules of the other people that can be there, I will get that information to Dennis Limata and Randy Jard and Jason McCarthy. I know that an adjacent property owner who attended the meeting was very pleased with that announcement, because there's going to be some shrubs and bushes over in that direction. The internal work on the warming building is going well. Dave Wiegand and Pete LaRue and myself have the ceiling in place, all the drywall on the ceiling, and we will get to work on the walls next week. And Supervisor Limata, if you know anybody that's really good at taping and mudding, probably next week, end of next week or the beginning of the following one. And
I've already got a volunteer to assist me.
Do you? I thought she left. Okay, no, I'm not talking about her. So, that's about it for Lions Field right now, but we do want to get these things planted, and we do want to put up barriers so that we can stop the traffic, even though we have picnic tables and all kinds of things there that people maneuver their way through there still in vehicles. So we need to work on that real quick. Any questions?
No, I think it's really cool for the board to hear it with this Renee from the Conservation District coming through with all the trees and shrubs, and it came about because our planner had won a door prize at an event at the Ordock, and where he was to receive some free trees and shrubs for his home yard, and so he went in there to talk to him and said, actually, I'd kind of like to just use this to donate it to Lions Field, because here's what we're looking for. And instead, she stepped up and said, those are the kind of projects we'd love to get behind. So you keep yours and get what you want for your personal thing. We'll take care of Lions Field in its entirety. And then she came back and said, and I've got 2 groups, 35 students total, who will do all the plantings. So, I mean, that's so cool for them to step up and do this for us, because it saves us a tremendous amount of time, but also money in having to go out and purchase all those. And it was a very interesting conversation to hear. She is going to take a map that Jason's sending over there tomorrow, and she's going to kind of put what they had in mind as far as the buffer of trees, a combination of blue spruce, white pine, red pine, but it's going to be it's a cool project, and to see somebody step up in a neighborhood park like that. And again, the neighbors were happy to hear that it creates that buffer zone from the park, from the next door neighbors, which is good also. So I wanted to make sure that we got it out there again, like hats off, and thanks to the rec committee for pulling that together.
Who's gonna plant them
North Star Academy.
after we get the?
Thanks, Mike. The next item on our agenda is 8D, continue the household rubbish and brush yard waste disposal issues. Manager Gerard.
Well, this has been a fairly widely discussed issue. Kirk and I have been meeting with both the landfill staff as well as the North Country disposal staff, looking at various options. We are currently awaiting a proposal from them. I did put a correspondence in your packet, giving you an idea of what we've been talking with them about. They range anywhere from, and again, we're waiting for actual proposals from them in terms of what their costing may be, so we can do some calculations on the impacts. But they range anywhere from curbside pickup, similar to what some other municipalities around the area do, all the way to in the spring and in the fall setting aside a week, basically, that anybody can bring anything, any quantities free of cost. So we're looking at least 4 different options to bring back to the board to address this. All of them will have some form of cost associated with them, but again, looking at the longer-term impact, we're confident that it's not going to be any kind of a significant impact, that likely we'll be able to absorb that because we'll no longer be dealing with it ourselves. And those of you who paid attention to what was happening over at the site, I've made the comment before, it amazes me that there are any trees left standing in the township for the amount of brush and leaves and trees and everything that showed up at the landfill. I think we had a pretty good import business going on. But at any event, we spent a lot of time with Public Works staff loading that stuff every day, loading it into dumpsters, having the dumpsters hauled by North Country, making it small enough to fit in some cases into the dumpsters. So we're looking at that cost not being borne any longer, offsetting potential increased costs from North Country for other manners of handling it. So, as I say, I gave you 3 of the options that we're talking about in the communication. We are awaiting, Kirk got two of the proposals in today. We're waiting for 2 others, and we should be ready for your June 2nd meeting to get you a formal proposal and proposed contract.
Questions or comments go ahead, Dan.
I had a question from someone saying, since the property has not been sold now, that it fell through, why we couldn't go back to dumping it back on the property that we had now.
Well, it technically hasn't fallen through yet. The purchase agreement time frame came up, but the proposer is, they're simply waiting for an appraisal from the bank on current properties that they own, and they are going forward as though they've purchased it, although they have not as yet. The property is advertised, as the board identified. It is posted up on Craigslist. It's posted on our website. It's posted on our web page. It'll be in the Mining Journal Friday and Saturday, and where you emailed it out to all the developers that we work with, that it is available for bids. We've asked them to put proposals in. So we are still going forward, and for that reason, we haven't gone back over there. It's just, keep moving back and forth is not a good measure. So, excuse me, the board established the 30 days from the last board meeting, which is actually, I think it's June 2nd or June 3rd, basically. No, it's June 5th, I'm sorry, June 5th. And at that point in time, if we still have it, we may have suggested to the board that possibly that piece be carved out and not used. Obviously, we would rather move all of that property and put those proceeds against the new buildings that we put up, but that is an option.
Other questions or comments?
Excuse me.
Seeing none, we'll be looking forward to seeing what you come up with, Randy. And I know when you guys look at the city of Marquette, they don't have unlimited, brush drop off. They keep it in a fenced-in area. You got to show your driver's license and utility billing. There's a reason for it. If you look at the amount that we move out, Randy, jokingly talked about we're importing a lot, but it's true, we're importing a lot. You just look at the sheer volume that we move out of there. Unfortunately, for the residents of Marquette Township, having one that's available 24/7 is convenient as all get out, but at the same time, it's as convenient as all get out for everybody. And so we've certainly seen commercial vehicles with, yard maintenance in there, and if we were creating some compost, maybe it'd be a good thing because we'd be creating more compost, but we're paying to have it trucked away and hauled away. So it's costing us all money. Everybody who pays taxes in this township is paying to have it available 24/7. I would suggest that as we move forward, whatever it is, that at least is controlled within a fenced-in area or has convenient times. If we have to staff it, there may be a little more additional funding, but maybe it won't be because we'll have less to move. Maybe it'll end up being a wash with the amount of materials that we move out of there. But currently, it's unbelievable how much we haul away. And they said, you know, it's kind of like the first Wednesday, having to move it down 4 miles. Is it less convenient? Yes. But we still offer the service, and it's 4 miles down the road. If we can do it out there, is it less convenient? Yes, I agree, it's less convenient, but at the same time, we can get it down there and it's 4 miles. But we'll see what the other options are. It may be that we offer it in the spring and in the fall, so that there is a 1-week period where we do it and try to catch it, so where we get everybody's spring cleanup, and then we can address it again at fall cleanup, and then have drop-offs at other times during the year out at North Country. I mean, we're looking at every option. I know it was a hot-button issue for a lot of people, and it's always a good thing when you can get folks involved with local government, so they let you know how you're doing, whether it's positive or negative. But it's nice to hear that, you know, folks are paying attention. They let us know that they weren't real happy with seeing it close, and we're going to come up with something. It may not be what it was, and it may not be 24/7, but it may end up, you know, saving you money in the long run.
Just one additional last comment that I wanted to make is Kirk did inform me just before we came into the meeting that North Country has agreed to expand into Saturday, so they'll have Saturday hours as well.
Thank you. Next item on your agenda is 8E, continued discussion of the DDA boundary expansion. We've been trying to get a DDA meeting together without a lot of success in being able to get a quorum, which brings up two things. Number one, I think we just need to have that date set in stone, that it's the third Monday of the month quarterly or something, so that people can get it in their planners and plan around it, and that may help. Number two, it means we may need to expand our membership in the DDA, so we're looking for folks who have an interest in being part of the DDA. One of the reasons that we're looking at expanding the DDA is because it hasn't been done in quite some time. It doesn't include all the way out in our commercial district. It doesn't pick up Lowe's, for example. So we want to have those conversations with the DDA to see if there is an interest or a need for us to expand those boundaries, especially in light of the Michigan Tax Tribunal rulings, because we're looking at every option available to us to recapture back some of those funds. One of the things with the commercial district is that they got their taxes reduced. A lot of them got their taxes reduced by 2/3. But that means 2/3 less for police services, 2/3 less for fire services, 2/3 less for general operations. And so is there a way that we can look at the DDA boundaries and maybe pick some of that back up through a special assessment just in the DDA district? It may come to it that we need to investigate that a little bit more, but it's kind of where we're at right now. And Randy, you can talk about the meeting that we held last week.
As Supervisor Lehman mentioned, we did have a meeting last week with several of the DDA members. We did not have a quorum at the meeting, but we also did have participation from the Board of Light and Power, from the MDOT, and from the Road Commission in discussion about an answer that the DDA asked early on when we were in our early discussions about expanding the boundaries. What's in it for the businesses? I mean, why would the businesses support expansion of the DDA? You know, they would potentially be subject to taxation. The DDA has the ability to levy up to 2 mills for restricted purposes within only the DDA. And the purposes basically that the members of the DDA were talking about were the things that would happen within the boundaries could be things like lighting, which we dearly need. Everybody knows that it's dark out in that corridor in the wintertime, almost well, obviously sunrise to sunset, but it's only about 4 hours difference in this wintertime. But, you know, deal with the lighting, potentially putting utilities underground, the overhead wires, the transformers, get rid of the telephone poles, make the corridor look more aesthetically pleasing. After all, it is our main street. It's our downtown right now. Our front porch, as Jason likes to reference it in planning. and deal with pedestrian issues. We've had some very serious pedestrian issues in the corridor. Just the layout of it with hotels, motels, and businesses on one side of the street, restaurants on the other side of the 4-lane divided highway, people trying to cross back and forth, trying to move families back and forth at the Walmart and Target intersection. I've seen that, entire families trying to cross there, not at the light. And it's difficult. Those are the kind of things that the DDA would like to see happen within the corridor, and our feeling is that most of the businesses along the corridor would be supportive of that if there was those kind of activities taking place. So the BLP was very supportive, although they were a little bit disheartening in terms of what their estimations of cost were. They do have some expansions planned, putting another circuit in to serve the western and far southern part of the township, as well as other areas. But overall, the conclusion coming out of there was we're probably looking at about a $20 million project over a number of years to do all of those kinds of things we would like to do in the corridor. There was ultimately some discussion about breaking the corridor in half, to the east half and the west half, basically utilizing the Target, Walmart and Target intersection as kind of it's not really halfway, but using that as the break point. Because remember, in 2019, the Michigan Department of Transportation is going to be reconfiguring that segment from the Walmart-Target intersection west, hopefully all the way to the Negaunee Township line, but certainly out to where Northwoods Road comes out there on the west side of the Ford dealership, Fox Motors, to extend the boulevard concept that we currently have through the rest of the township through there. That will provide some relief from some of the entrances and exits that we've had on US 41 that have caused us some difficulty by converting those to Michigan lefts in a boulevard configuration similar to what we have to the east. So those things are all in the hopper, and that is happening in 2019 building season. They'll be doing that. The light at Brickyard, traffic control light at Brickyard, figures into that prominently. There is some discussion at that intersection as to whether there will be direct lefts there or there will not be direct lefts there, just straight across traffic, east, west, north, south, funneling to Michigan lefts to reverse traffic flows. But that'll all be dealt with in the safety design work of it. So those things are happening in 2019 is when you will see that. They have, MDOT has made a commitment that there will be maintaining of two-way traffic, probably down to one lane in each direction while that's going on, but would not be detours off of US 41. They'd maintain the traffic flowing. So the DDA discussion was along that lines, as long as MDOT is doing that project, that would be when we would be looking at doing some other projects in that segment, but concentrating mainly on the segment of the US 41 corridor east of that intersection initially, which would reduce the cost substantially. Well, probably by about half, which is it's still $10 million project. So that's where we're going with the DDA. That's where we're going in our discussions. In terms of what might we be able to do with expanding those boundaries, not only east-west, but north as well, to take in this developing area on the north side of the highway.
Any questions, Lynn?
It looks like by my last listing, we've got 9 DDA members. Is that current?
Correct. That's the standard membership. But what we run into, basically, is we run into life, basically. Everybody now has conflicts with the third Monday quarterly, which was our normal schedule. So Supervisor Lemitz is correct. We are going to be reaching out to the members to see, do they really wish to remain on the DDA. We have had one that decided not to, just because of his other business interests that are going on and developments that he's involved in. So we will be communicating with them. I do know there are at least 4 of those members do wish to continue. So we may be looking at adding a few new ones.
I was just wondering about the business association having some kind of a liaison. I didn't know if there were any openings, that's why I looked.
We did have that discussion about involving one member from the business association on the DDA, just specifically for that purpose.
Okay.
Other questions? Pete?
Randy, there is a temporary light going up by Best Buy this year, correct?
There is a temporary light planned. We had hoped that it would be there already, but there are some issues between some property owners in the area that need to be resolved before that light would be put in. We did receive information last Friday that it looks like that is going to proceed forward, although I don't have confirmation from that from MDOT as yet.
Nothing else, move on to new business. 9A, consider Iron Range role presentation. I know you guys have been waiting patiently. Sorry we didn't get you moved up on the agenda a little sooner. Yeah.
It's under the,
As chairperson of the rec committee, I'd be remiss if I didn't address our other park that we have. We have two parks, Schwimmen Park and Trailhead on the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. We began celebrating National Trails Day in 2007 on the park, and most of the celebrations of National Trails Day were cleanup and improvements, repairing signs, putting down wood chips, and making the park much more attractive. In 2013, after we acquired the property that we needed for grade level access to the trail, we recognized the financial donors, the 44 financial, they were businesses, organizations, and individuals. In 2014, we were able to facilitate and participate in our first regional event at the trailhead. And that's what this is about here tonight, the Iron Range Roll. So one of the things that last year we asked for some porta potties that were placed in 3 different locations. This year the rec committee is requesting 1 porta potty, an ADA potty, or placed at where the marquee is off of the Schwimwood Park. That will cost $175, a lot less than the 3 did last year. So that's one thing that we're asking for this year. And this is really our only event that we have at Schwimwood other than cleanup and repair and stuff like that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you David Nyberg and Megan Kaiser. And they're both 40 Below members, and they're Iron Range Roll Task Force members.
Thanks, Mike. Mike's a member of our planning committee. He's been a really valuable asset. Really like to first of all thank the board and attendees, members of the public, for allowing us to come and give you an update. I think hopefully you remember last year, maybe a little bit earlier than this time last year, we came here to kind of explain to you what our grand scheme or our grand plan was, and well, it worked. Even though we had sleet and rain and I think snow in some spots along the trail and it was very cold, everybody had smiles on their faces at the end of the race, and you'll see some of that in a little bit. And we're very happy to be back to talk to you about the second annual. And our planning committee is really, we've went to the participants and members of the public and governing jurisdictions to ask how we could improve the event. We're going to constantly be striving to improve the event, which hopefully you'll see is reflected in this year's planning. And a lot of that feedback came from actual participants in the event, so we're very grateful for that feedback. And we're continuing to look to improve this and develop this event as a signature one in the community for years to come. So we really appreciated your support last year, and without further ado, here's kind of the overview of what the event is and where we're going. Megan's going to talk a little bit later in the program about the beneficiary of the event, as it is a fundraiser. So I'm Dave Nyberg. I'm a board member of 40 Below Young Professionals of Marquette County. It's my second year serving on the board. 40 Below was founded in 2010 as a venue for professional development and networking in Marquette County. We're in our 6th year now, and the organization continues to grow. Our membership continues to grow, and our scope and size and status of our mission continues to grow as our members become more interested in more than networking and growing professionally. The organization has become more civic oriented, and we've done some events over the past year, such as hosting candidate forums for county office and city office in the city of Marquette, and perhaps expanding that to other jurisdictions into the future if there's interest. We've hosted meet and greets with state officials, and we've continued to, of course, the Iron Range Roll as a fundraiser for nonprofit beneficiary, and these are the types of things that we envision 40 Below being engaged in addition to professional development and networking. You'll notice that our mission statement there on the bottom changed 2 years ago, and that was kind of the impetus for a lot of the discussion for why we're here today. To connect the working professionals in Marquette County under the age of 40 through networking, professional development, civic engagement, and social and recreational opportunities. Recreational opportunities and civic engagement are the biggest changes to that mission statement, and that continues to guide us. The vision for the Iron Range Roll really started as a conversation about how do we create a signature event that we're in charge of, that we can put together as a benefit to the community and also raises money for a good cause. We didn't know what the cause was going to be. We just knew that we had the capacity and the energy to do something that we thought could be beneficial. And this is what we came together with the Iron Range Roll. We saw the Iron Ore Heritage Trail as a tremendous community asset that was being underutilized, not for lack of interest, but because it's still being developed. And we seized the opportunity to become the first major recreational event on Iron Ore Heritage Trail. In fairness, the Marquette Marathon followed us very shortly thereafter. Of course, that is a size and scope that we would like to achieve someday. And they were terrific partners in helping us get on our feet. So what is the Iron Range Roll? It's a 16-mile point-to-point fun race. We like to stress that this is intended to be fun and family-friendly, but it's also competitive and in the friendly atmosphere as well. It starts at the Cliff Shaft Museum in Ishpeming, and it ends at the Marquette Commons in Marquette. Of course, along the Iron Ore Heritage Trail goes right here through Marquette Township by Schwimmet Park, as Mike described. There are 3 ways you can participate. You can bike via a race. You can run as a part of a relay team of 4 participants, or you can run the event yourself. Actually, we were surprised last year to notice the amount of individual runners. That's a long ways to run. It's a little bit early in the marathon training schedule for a lot of people, but we saw a pretty sizable number of participants running it. Proceeds of the event benefit the YMCA of Marquette County's Reach and Rise Youth Mentoring Program. I'm not going to say much about that because that's why Megan's here to talk to you today. When is it? It's National Trails Day. No secret about that. We picked this weekend for a reason. We want to celebrate National Trails Day. And also, quite frankly, we, with Mike as part of our original planning team, this is what came into the discussion. Trying to find an event on the front end of summer where there already wasn't an event every year, but also captivating a significance like this. And we know that this day was very important to the folks planning at Schwimmet Park. Race starts at 1 p.m. We'd like to start it earlier, but our finish is right in the middle of the Marquette Farmers Market, and probably wouldn't be good to have a race flying through there in the morning time. So we're good partners with the DDA and the Farmers Market, and we're starting our race later in the afternoon. We're going to have an awards celebration again this year at Ordock Brewing Company. We created a little bit of buffer time in there so people can go home and change, especially if there's inclement weather and it becomes more comfortable to do so. We want people to come back and be able to enjoy that. Right. What's the route? Yeah, I think most of you are familiar, but there's a quick visual. We are increasing the presence of water. We had water stations at every one of our aid stations last year and a few more. This year there will be water at least every 2 miles. So we're encouraging participants who need water more frequently to bring some of their own. We also shifted up the relay routes this year. Last year we placed a significance on the relay exchanges happening at trailheads because we thought it would be cool to highlight the trailheads. We have some great trailheads, but created some logistical problems. Trying to have a detour up to the Iron Industry Museum was a little bit problematic. Some people were confused. Some people actually got lost, believe it or not, despite having massive signs, arrows. Anything can go wrong, especially with bad weather. So this year, our committee did a really good job kind of picking out these spots where the relays will occur. And they're all about 4 miles for each relay leg, so that kind of shifts it up. There's a fun picture there. We actually had a mother-child team last year pushing strollers, and they all finished. And one of them was pregnant. So, to show you that this truly is family-friendly. Here's why we call it the roll. The trail elevation profile graph there says it all. It's about a 1,000-foot descent, most of that happening from Marquette Township down to the city of Marquette. So it can be a lot of fun for folks. Another big change we did this year was, and this was feedback, and because of personal experience, the rain at the registration was a disaster. And people smiled through it and we got through it, but we're going to have registration end on June 4th. So we're cutting it short by 2 days, but we think that'll add for an easier transition for everybody, including volunteers and the participants. And we'll also have bag pickup the day before at the finish point in Marquette Commons, so people can get all their t-shirts and their swag that they're getting from our sponsors beforehand and put it where they want it and not have to lug that around. Safety and emergency is a big part of planning an event like this. We have a very robust emergency response and safety plan. Aid stations will be present at every relay station. We have Marquette Township, Bell Hospital, Upper Peninsula Health System, EMS personnel on site and/or on standby for service. Volunteer and emergency preparedness leads. We will also have a designated person at every aid station, and helmets are required. This is an especially fun opportunity to try and embarrass Ron DeMaris, because he got a special award last year for being the event MVP. We actually had a special medal made for him because he was so incredibly helpful with helping us develop a safety and emergency plan. And we're very grateful to the township for all of that support. It was really awesome, especially in our first year. We couldn't believe the amount of support we got. It was really very important. So thank you. Got some questions and suggestions on tandem bikes and bike trailers. Believe it or not, people want to do this with bike trailers and on tandem bikes. Apparently, that's a good thing. So we're giving thumbs up. We're going to ask that tandem riders and bike trailers go to the back of the line, though. Why are we doing the Iron Range roll? This is where Megan comes in. Part of it is to promote healthy living and a family-friendly recreation on the Iron Heritage Trail. We've already talked about that. Promote fun and modest competition, and really promote something that, you know, sometimes we lose sight of, the heritage and connectivity of our communities. There's sometimes a lot of polarization between our communities in Marquette County, and that's especially obvious to somebody who came as an outsider 4 years ago. And really, 40 Below, we're a countywide organization. We want to bring our communities together, and there's a lot that does that already. So celebrating that heritage is really important for us in this event. And Megan is up. I'm going to click through some photos that you can see. This is some of the smiles and fun that we had last year.
So my name is Megan Kaiser, and I've been a mentor in the Reach and Rise program since it started back in October of a year or two ago. Can't remember now. But I'm here on behalf of Melissa DeMars, who is the program director. Unfortunately, she was unable to be here because she is in the process of training a number of new mentors tonight. So she asked me to step in, so I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of an overview for those of you who don't know what the Reach and Rise program is through the YMCA. So the Reach and Rise program was created by mental health clinicians to develop a new approach to mentoring that equipped the volunteers to create deeper and more intentional change in youth's lives, much like a therapeutic relationship. The program leader, Melissa, is a licensed professional counselor who oversees the program and provides training and ongoing support to the mentors and their families throughout the duration of the match. Reach and Rise serves kids ages 6 to 17 years old who are interested in being matched with a mentor. Some of the youth served struggle with low self-esteem, mental health issues, peer difficulties, family conflict, poor academic progress, and/or poor decision-making. Mentors within our program are trained to intentionally model to the mentee how to identify and manage emotions, teach good decision-making skills, and practice effective communication skills. Mentors are matched one-on-one with youth for 1 year and spend 1 to 3 hours per week with that youth. Mentors help youth increase their self-awareness through pointing out their strengths and validating and encouraging them in their interests and passions, which is something they may not get other places in their lives. So the mentoring relationships helps youth grow in emotional intelligence, which research shows is a critical factor in determining educational and occupational success and developing healthy interpersonal relationships. So a little recap on last year. We honestly cannot thank you enough for the support. Last year, through the first annual Iron Range Reach and Roll, $5,000 was raised for the program, and that allowed us to purchase arts and crafts supplies and educational materials, and allowed us to participate in recreational, educational, and enriching activities in the community. We were able to put together an amazing fall/Halloween party for the kids, where everybody dressed up in costumes, and we got together and we carved pumpkins and ate healthy snacks. No candy, just finger foods of vegetables and all kinds of goodies. So that was wonderful. We were able to bring a number of the kids to an NMU hockey game, where after the game we got to go and get autographs from the players, and they were just absolutely ecstatic. NMU donated t-shirts and playing cards and all kinds of things, so that was really, really wonderful. We were able to attend a cooking class at the Marquette Food Co-op, and learned about Mexican street food and got to eat our fill. So that was absolutely wonderful to leave full and learn something in the process. And we were able to teach the kids how to kayak through the YMCA Aquatics program. So all absolutely wonderful things, and that is where the money that is raised through this event goes to. So just wanted to say thank you again, and hopefully we can continue this into the future.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions for those guys from the board at all? Lynn?
I'm wondering how many kids you're talking about. Is it like 5 or 20 or, yes?
Currently, at one point in time, there were 11 matches. They wanted to, we have 11 matches. My match just ended last night, so there's constant rotation of mentors leaving the program, the year match ending, and new mentors coming in. So I think the most we have had is 11 matches at any given time, but we are always looking for mentors willing to donate their time to this wonderful cause.
So the children don't get any more than a year because you don't probably have a mentor, or can they go again?
You can go again. Actually, we put a year. There's an initial year time limit on it. If you want to extend the match up to another 6 months, that's definitely allowed. But through the Reach and Rise program, there is a 1.5-year cap on it through the program. You can still choose to meet with your mentee outside of that, but it just won't be managed through Reach and Rise. But we do have one of the mentees choose to renew, so she was matched with a second mentor, so she's now going into her 2nd year. So that's, so there's definitely the option for that to happen.
Anyone else? Thanks, you guys. What a great cause, and you're coming through Marquette Township, which we really appreciate. But congratulations on the success, and I hope to see that it doubles. I know I would participate, honest, but my wife and daughter already signed up, and I've got to drop them off with their bikes at the start, so maybe next year.
Awesome. Yeah, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask folks to go to ironrangeroll.com to register. And also, thank you for, this is also, and also in addition to update you, it's also a little bit of a public relations opportunity for us to encourage people to either become a mentor for the Reach and Rise program or to participate. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Also want to get the word out that we're looking for volunteers to help out with the crossings and water, and so please get the word out if you're interested in coming out, and we'll watch a great event, and we'd like to have you out there. So either you can contact, actually you can contact me, and I'll put you in contact with Victoria, and she's in charge of volunteers. So what we're asking this year is only $175. What we're going to do is we're going to place, if the board consents to that, we would place this ADA facility, and it would be at the trailhead that's on the trail, and it's going to be there for a month because Pete LaRue and Marilyn LaRue and Michelle Moran and myself, we did some cleanup this recently, or last Saturday, and there's a lot of stuff that would have been nice if it had been in the toilet. So hopefully just for sanitary issues, you'll do that. Also, I want to mention that thanks to Walmart, they provided a $40 gift card for snacks and water and bananas for the volunteers. So we have a number of those left, so if we get some volunteers. Pete LaRue is actually going to head up the township end of this on National Trails Day. He may have forgotten about that, but I'm just here to remind him. Hopefully the board will support this by providing a porta potty. Thank you.
So Randy, you don't really need a motion to spend $175. I'm just assuming that you are willing to acquiesce to.
All I need is $175. Who passed that? No. Yeah, we can find it.
Thank you. Looks like you got your $175, Mike. Again, thanks you guys for the very informative presentation, as well as giving people the opportunity to see it. And we would encourage, whether you're a Marquette Township resident or not, get involved. Go ahead and look it up in ironrainroads.com and check it out, get registered, participate, and certainly let us know or let Mike Springer know if you've got an opportunity to a chance to volunteer at one of the trailheads or one of the street crossings, so that we can make this a fun, safe event for everybody. Pete?
Just want to remind people who walk at the Schwimmerwood Park, the bridge, the little bridge there, it has dropped down a little bit, so just be careful until we get it fixed.
Randy?
Mike mentioned it very briefly, but just for information for the folks that are using Schwimmerwood Park or using the Heritage Trail through there, he had mentioned the one ADA restroom facility that is going to be remaining there. The charge for those is basically equal to a 30-day rental to have those for the 1 day. So we opted that we're going to retain one of them for the 30 days and just leave it there. So, and the other comment is for those who are inclined to deposit their refuse at Schwimmerwood Park, you are about to be watched. So you'll be required to clean it up if we see you.
Thanks. Next item on your agenda is 9B, consider the staff overtime report. I asked Randy to address this just because there had been a few questions directed his way from a couple of board members, and I wanted to make sure that we took the time to get it here so that we could ask any questions or address it. I know he provided some answers in regards to why we're looking at such an increase in overtime again for 2015. Certainly enough to where we'd be concerned, but I did want to give him a chance to explain why we have the overtime that we do and how he's addressing it in order to keep it in check for the remainder of 2015. So without further ado, Randy.
Well, what we experienced, and this was during the roughly 3 weeks that 2.5 weeks that Kirk was on vacation and out of the country. A spike in overtime, about 52 hours over two pay periods, and when I got into that, I was less than pleased. Let me put it that way. When I saw it, so I got in touch with our staff to find out what was going on. And basically, what it amounted to is it was about half and half, almost half and half. There was one residence that remained from the winter freeze on Huron Street that we could not repair until the ground started to thaw. So we were pumping. What was happening is as you'll recall from prior discussions, the grinder pumps hold about 40 gallons in themselves before they start to back up into the residence. So they had set the grinder alarm basically to trigger that. So they were responding to alarms, but every time that occurred, it was 2 hours of overtime. Under the labor contract. I was a little miffed that they did not revise their schedule to cover that, and I didn't see it until we got the pay period, at the end of the pay period when the timesheets came in. The other issue that we had was the Cox tank had about a 5-foot ice cap in it, and that ice cap was riding up and down with the volume of the water, and it kept triggering alarms. There's really no way to thaw that. There's no way to get into it short of draining the tank. On one of the cycles, it actually contacted, there are 3 different sensors within the tank that work in concert with each other to tell the operators what's actually happening inside of the tank. On one of the rotations, it actually froze into the top antenna and pulled it off, basically. Broke it off the top of the tank. So we were getting continuous misreads, basically, and that's what accounted for that overtime. The tank is slowly being drawn down basically now so they can get inside and do the repairs to the sensors that need to be done. And that's just one of those things that winter brought along with the ice cap floating on top of the tank, short of draining it. The grinder pumps, that particular one was a frozen lateral, which are the PVC pipes, the small diameter pipes. So that one has now been dug up and placed deeper. So we should not have a freeze on that one again. Can't say that won't happen somewhere else, depending on winter temperatures, weather, frost conditions, those kinds of things. Those laterals are down, limited in terms of how deep they can be by the depth of the grinder pump. So we're somewhat limited. So we do insulate those when we can dig them up. That was it.
Questions for Manager Gerard? One thing I see on here, Randy, that I want to bring out too is that the community center rental.
Yes.
Because we had 10 hours for one employee and 11 for another, and you've addressed that with the filling of the position that will be responsible for the community center rental.
Correct. As we discussed during the budget process, we did not have the use of the community center that we anticipated last year, so we did not fill that three-quarter time position. We were simply covering with overtime. Well, it caught us when it spiked back up again, so that position has now been filled. So you'll not be seeing our regularly scheduled service workers covering those weekend and night activities that are going on in the community room. The part-timer will be covering that, so we should have no more overtime.
And then the first Wednesday, I still wonder why we don't have him start later in the day so that we don't have that overtime every month.
We're able to do that now with that other position in.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 9C. Consider the capital improvement project request form from planning and an update. Ellen, if you would approach the podium. Probably lulled you into a false sense of restfulness, waiting 2 hours and 20 minutes.
I checked the Tiger score. I'm in no hurry to go home.
Is it bad?
Either are you. No.
I haven't looked.
This is the first step in implementing our new procedure for doing the capital improvement plan. What we think is key on here, for one thing, it's got more information on projects, how they tie into other projects. Obviously, you can't do phase 2 if you haven't done phase 1 yet, so it's important to know that. But the most important difference is give very definite definitions of what's essential, what's desirable, what's acceptable, and what's deferrable, and that's going to be what guides what gets done in year 1 as opposed to what gets done in year 5. And kind of the template we were basing that on was the Grand Rapids Charter Township. The final product is probably going to look something like that. We probably won't go into so much of the grant, the available funding for it, because that's not our expertise, that's yours. And also we will have a narrative. It probably won't be War and Peace like this one is. It will be much shorter. But we're here to ask questions. This is the first step. We're hoping to get it back so that we can work on this during July. And by the time that you start your budget work sessions, that will have this, the new capital improvement. And once it's done, then it will just be a question of updating every year. And, if we get any feedback from the department heads on the form, we'll tweak it. But we thought it covered most of what were looking for. I don't know if you had it in your packets. Do you have any?
Yep.
comments?
And that's why I wanted it on, is I think that, from our standpoint from the board, after our meeting last year and where we wanted to go, and I think Grand Rapids, we looked at a couple different townships. Grand Rapids had a good one, although we cover a lot of their same information in other areas, our rec plan and our master plan documentation, so that you don't have to have as much narrative as they did. Certainly, that it would just be a duplicate. But from our standpoint as a board and during our budget sessions, we were looking for something that will really help us and department heads be able to clearly prioritize items, talk about where it's coming from, why the need, and really I think the key here is that definitions of your project priorities, and I think that's going to hinge a lot on the success of changing the CIP to make sense to us and actually be used as a tool. One of the frustrations that we've had is we've had a CIP because, the law requires us to, but we haven't used it, and yet it can be this fantastic tool. And so we're looking forward to it, and that's why I wanted to get it in the packet and have you here so that the board could really have a chance to see it. And, is this asking the right questions? Is it leaving anything out? I mean, if we're going to tweak it, this would be the time to do it. And yeah, it can change. It's not set in stone, but I really wanted the board to be able to see it and comment and directly, especially to have you here, Alan, as the chair of Planning Commission. And I'll leave it at that. Board member comment. Lynn?
For Randy, actually, one of our, first of all, did you see anything that you wanted to add or change, or had a chance to look at it?
I have. It's in your packet, and I've had a chance to take a look at it. In fact, we're using it. I've met with all the department heads already and told them that we're starting the budget process next Tuesday, when we get back after Memorial Day. And we're going to be using this format, basically, so I've asked them to already start looking at what any of their capital issues may be, and we're going to be utilizing this format in the budget process.
Okay, and we were concerned with the time frame. I kind of gave the commission a little bit of an overview on when we start, but I didn't know when exactly you gave them to the department heads, so.
Well, this is the preliminary stages. We generally take the month of June to put the preliminary budget together and target getting it to you by mid-July is what our target is going to be.
Because I knew we needed 6 months at least. I knew it would be after June. So.
Our only issue with that is we're projecting what the revenues might be, because we really don't know until June, month end closes, and that's sometime late July, basically, before that gets closed, before we have a real good picture on what, from the previous 6 months to this 6 months of this year, what that generated. So.
And I would expect that if they had any backup, each department head had any backup
be attached.
Information for us, it'd be attached. Each sheet would be separate. Okay.
So you'd like to have these ultimately filled out by department heads and back to the planning commission by mid-June?
Mid-June is what we're thinking. And it's part of your budget process. It's not the same as your budget process. We're basically going to suggest you have to decide how much money there is to spend, but hopefully this will help you decide what has to be done as opposed to what would be nice to be done. And the acceptable says it's a worthwhile project to be considered if funding is available. And as you get into the budget process, you'll know if you're getting a grant somewhere that we may not have known. But we probably will base this on essential the first year, and then desirable for the second year, and that's how we're foreseeing it. But we'll wait and see how it comes in.
Yeah, in our more active departments, let me put it that way, from a capital standpoint, we've been talking for several months already about being aware of what they're going to need, because we knew we were giving this kind of a time frame. So mid-June back to the planning commission is not going to be an issue.
Randy, I'm wondering how you're going to do public works in Kirk. I mean, with the road project, it'll be in progress. When you're going through this, how's he even going to plan? This is going to be tough for him.
We do what we need to do.
There's a grinder pump on Huron Street that I imagine is going to be essential.
I know
That's
where
done.
the project priority list is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
we got to set the limits. What's really, in our capital improvement planning process? Is it, it's not everything that costs $1,000. It's, it's not $5,000. What is it? Every community needs to decide what works for them. Is it $10,000? Is it $50,000 that show up in these, so that we're a smaller community, and in those kind of projects, smaller projects can have impacts. Whether it's a $15,000 project or a $50,000 project. Is still a big deal for us. We need to know where the $15,000 is coming from, especially in light of the tax on our revenue stream across the board. So I think that what we really want to end up with is that we have something that is a working model that we all use it, that, as every board member prepares for the budgeting process, they're like, well, where's the CIP? I want to go through that first, so I really need to know what projects these guys are anticipating, and does that match up with their budget? And if we're going to approve the capital improvement spending, if we're going to say, yeah, we agree with the CIP, then we better be cross-referencing it with the budget, saying, did we put aside money for it? Because we told them, yes, we agree that these are high-priority projects, but we better make sure that the money is set aside, and we don't say, this is a great project, but we're just not going to fund it. I mean, I want it to be really a document that we use and utilize, and that's why I said our frustration is, we've had one because the law requires us to have one, but that's where it ended. And I like the priority, I like where we're heading, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final.
And hopefully the department heads too will get on board and realize that we're truly asking what is essential, not this may be something that you really think is beneficial. It probably is, but then that gets down to desirable. That you know what essential is, and hopefully we made that putting the definitions right on the form hopefully will help with that.
Ready?
Going through it, there's, could be a tremendous amount of information here, and then when I got down to I, it says, is the proposed budget essential, desirable, and then I start going back through. I'm hoping there's enough information from A through G to give me that definition. If not, I think they should have, so a little bit more information, if it's essential.
Yeah, and like I said, and that's, hopefully we'll get that from the department heads, these questions are meant to help them determine that, as well. And also to see how it fits in. They're doing it for their department, but, we have, is it gonna generate revenue? Is it just going to be cost? And that hopefully will help you too, because you will get these forms. You'll get our CIP, but you'll get these forms too.
It should be a cover page, Ernie, with supporting documentation on it.
That's what I've been looking at. It says essential. Why is it essential? I can go back and read all this, but if it doesn't address it, then I, as a board member, am going to have some problems in that too.
Sure. Randy?
And it's in that regard where Public Works is really going to be easier for them, because keeping the water system and the sewer system operating is essential. I mean, it just purely is. And, from that standpoint, what we're talking about with Public Works are things like additional equipment and, replacing it like a Vector if it's wearing out, or, if it's getting to the point where maintenance isn't doing it anymore and it actually has to be replaced. So from that standpoint, the operation of the systems, Kirk has the maintenance and repair line item, basically, and that's where his emergency repairs come from. So from Public Works standpoint, what he's going to be looking at is it, now that he's got his new facilities, I mean, is there really something? I'm not expecting much from Public Works in terms of, necessary capital improvements, other than operating type things for the water and the wastewater system. And those will primarily be coming out of his already funded maintenance and repair fund. Where I expect to see some things coming out is possibly out of assessing, potentially for new programming that needs to be done, because we're in review currently. There may be some new modules that we have to be able to comply with the state, those kinds of things. Planning, zoning, I'm not seeing much that I would expect out of planning and zoning. Public Works, building and grounds, we're in pretty good shape now. The vehicles are in decent shape. Where I think we're going to see things is in recreation, is where we're going to be looking at capital improvements in there to finish off what we're doing with getting the Lionsfield Recreation Area up and running. We've made the big expenditures already, but there are going to be some other things like the hydro seeding and things like that that are going to need to be done. Possibly trail development, things like that. So I'm not expecting anything really major coming up. I've not gotten any indication from department heads, and we've been talking about it now for a couple of months to get ready for this. And there's really not anything really big on the horizon other than continuing operational type things.
Lynn?
I'm thinking then maybe it might help to have the chart of accounts number that we think that this will pertain to, so that when we look at the budget, we'll know exactly, where that's going. If it's 50,000, it's going to come out of recreation, or it's going to come out of whatever.
And that's what we're going to be relying on our accountant for, is to make that, working with the department heads when they're putting these together with their budgets, to identify where in the line items chart of accounts, what account that would come out of, what line item it would fit in.
When we'd have to beef up or not.
Correct.
Okay.
And what you said about recreation, a lot of those might be desirable. They're not essential, but they are desirable, and they are also the things that qualify for grant funding. So, they, even though they're not essential, they may be more doable than.
Correct.
than
Or
other
it's
things.
the last phase of a three-phase, activity, like finishing off the warming building, or something along those lines. Lighting, the lighting for the rink.
The other thing I wanted to remind you of is May 27th, this next meeting is our public hearing on the lighting ordinance. So that would be one of the final steps in getting ready to bring it to you. We think we have it where it should be, but that's why you have public hearings. If there's any more tweaking, it'll be delayed, but that will be coming up for you pretty soon. So, and Lynn had discussed a little bit about the street lighting. There's a very small portion that deals with street lighting, but it does, there is a line in there that gives some specifics for where those lights should go. but there's also a line that says, or as determined by the Marquette Township Board, so we threw it right back at you. So you're welcome.
That's a way to kick that can
Yeah,
back.
you got it.
All right.
Move to extend the meeting 15 minutes.
Support.
Motion support. Extend the meeting 15 minutes. All those in favor?
Tell Sherry.
Anything
Aye.
else?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Don't do anything too fun in the next 15 minutes.
Are you sure? Thanks, Ellen. Appreciate you coming in tonight.
It was
Dennis?
7-1.
Really?
Board is 7.
Dang.
Dennis?
Yep.
That meeting for the planning for public hearing is June 10th
Okay.
on lighting.
The public hearing is.
Yeah, it's
That's
not
your
the
public
10th.
hearing on June 10th, correct? Or the 24th?
May 27th is what Ellen
Or
just
is that-
said.
I thought you said June.
Lighting hearing May 27th.
Yep.
May 27th, okay, I just want to clarify.
May 27th.
May 27th will be the public hearing on lighting. Next week.
Thanks, Ellen. The next item on our agenda is 9D, consider budget amendment number 2015-05, Clerk Rattari.
Present to the board the budget amendment 2015-5. The highlight of that, as I noted before earlier in the meeting, was $80,000 to the General Services Administration Department for payment of the Marquette County for the Lowe's and Kohl's, Michigan Tax Tribunal tax decrease from 2013 and 2014. The offset will come from the fund balance. And I make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Motion is second. Board member comment?
I'd like to say no.
Seeing none, Clerk Rattari.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Durant?
Yes.
Trustee Truscott?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Limata.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
And 3 noes.
The next item on your agenda, 9E, Manager's Report, Manager Gerard.
Didn't need to extend the meeting for me. I really don't have anything to add. We've already talked about the DDA. We've talked a little bit about the building grounds already. The truck is up and equipped now and ready. It's in use. The MGD cost studies, the drafts were distributed to department heads. They've received input back from the department heads. It did result in a couple of corrections that they're working on now, which changes the numbers. Expect to have that for your next meeting.
Can't wait.
Any questions for Manager Gerard on his manager's report or any other item for that matter? Dan?
Since I see that the road restrictions are lifted on the 22nd of May, which is Friday, I'm assuming that the access road will be repaired.
Yep, they took off, actually, they took the weight restrictions off on the south side of US 41, but now we have a permit for the north side, so looking at that yesterday, it's a pretty sizable hole.
Just out of a suggestion, perhaps before winter next year, we might get a supply of road gravel, perhaps put behind the Public Works building or whatever, so we don't have to wait a month and a half. I know I've seen Mark Tran buses come down that road, and that entrance, you could lose the bus in some of those holes.
Yeah, I
So
almost
that
lost
might
a
be a
car.
possibility, since I've seen that we have used the dump truck for asphalt to fix potholes. Maybe we could do the same for that road.
Yeah, we got authority or okay from the road commission to go and fix some of the worst potholes on their behalf. We're hoping that next year that may be paved.
Any other questions? Seeing none, close the manager's report. Any public comment?
Boy, it's a good thing you extended this 15 minutes. I got 13. No, just real quick. As
one in
Randy
every
Gerard
crowd.
pointed out, recreation has been costing us more money, and it's going to continue to cost us more money. And it also, one of the things is that it's really important to our community, and it also is one of the reasons that people choose to live here because of our rural rural situation and also the amenities that we have just out in the woods. So I also want to mention Cliff Stammer and Roger Berry because they've been very supportive and very helpful at Schwemmwood. They've gone in and did the initial cleanup over there. And Cliff Stammer is, he's a U.S. certified sawyer, and he's also the trail boss for the North Country Trail, and he's been over there helping us with doing some sawing. There were some photos that I had for tonight, but Supervisor Limita suggested that it wouldn't be appropriate. I think he was concerned about the wives of the people that were in the photos going out and requiring their husbands to buy more life insurance. But I'll leave it at that. He has the photos. One of the reasons I mention that is that you will see the so-called bridge or boardwalk that we have over a county drain. And that has deteriorated, has sunk, and there were trees that fell on it and damaged that. So I'm going to ask Dave Wiegand to take a look at that, and we're going to try to repair that on our own, but we may have to come for some money for some boards and some work there. But again, thanks for your support with for the Recreation Committee.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, go to additional comments from board members. Go ahead.
Just one. We had a gentleman question his lighting at the end of his road, and I did drive down there and look at that, and I had a woman also contact me about her road. I'm going to stop tonight. I went by during the day, but I want to see it at night, so I just wanted to let her know that I'm going to go look. She wants a light. The other guy didn't, so maybe we should take his.
What's the address?
I can tell you later.
Okay.
I don't know if she wants it all
Okay.
public.
Other comments?
Nope.
Ernie?
I forgot to ask the management, on our building over there, do we have anything in the building left that we have to get rid of or that?
I think about the only things left, we did move, public, as you saw in my, my manager's report, building and grounds has moved into the Cox Pump House now because we basically were under orders from the fire department to vacate the two utility rooms that we have here. They weren't designed for what we were using them for. But they did take, they took one or two of the workstations and some of the equipment over there. The main thing that we have left in there is the old board table, which I can't find anybody who wants. We've offered it for free to all of the other townships as well as the road commission. Their rooms just aren't big enough to use them. So that is still over there, and then we have the racks of metal chairs are the big things. The rolling partitions are still there, but I think those are going to go with the building. But the two racks of folding chairs are still there as well.
You declare them as surplus and throw them on Craigslist?
We can. There was some indication that some of the other organizations around the area might want them, and I'm going to have to ask Roger as to whether we can donate to them or not. They're not governmental.
And the other question, there's a picnic table back behind the building.
Mhm.
Is it worthwhile moving, or is it
Oh, yeah.
worthwhile to ignore it and leave it?
No, it's not going to stay. It's going to move. It's probably going to come over here on the north side of the community room. The shed, we also have the shed there. We can't move that over here, but that might go somewhere else.
The last comment I have on some of the junk cars in the township and that. Is there anything we can do about it?
Well, we are. There are at least half a dozen that are currently receiving communications. Basically, we have to go through a process of notice, and they have an opportunity to correct, and all of those things. There's a cycle we have to go through that we're in the process of doing that. Those that are either very close to or in the right-of-way, we're turning over to the road commission for them to deal with. They have the ability to have them removed. Our issue is that some of our worst offenders keep them licensed. They keep licensing them even though they're not usable. In our ordinance, that's a loophole. If it's a licensed vehicle, it's okay.
Oh, there's plenty with no plates on them, I can assure you.
Oh, there are, and we have to get around to those.
That's my concern with our zoning, is do we have enough teeth in our zoning ordinance about it? And I think you bring up a good point that we should probably discuss at some point, Ernie.
Yep.
Because we have that one over on the highway that right off on the Commerce Drive there, across the road, and that business there by the big rock that we have.
Oh, yeah,
Back
okay.
down there, they got cars stacked up 4 or 5 high. So
Yep.
I'm a little concerned about that.
Those need to be sold. They need to be sold for scrap, which is what they do with those. But we have bigger concerns right in Trowbridge with individuals accumulating vehicles and, yeah,
I understand that.
yeah.
Actually, I think that's what we're going to talk about after we get through with the lighting ordinance, is go back to all the grass height and everything, and look at putting some teeth in those, because we've had that teeth conversation quite a few times.
The only issue with putting teeth into the ordinance is you also have to enforce it,
Enforcement, yep.
which is an issue.
Other comments? Clerk Chari.
Yeah, I'm going to be attending a conference this Thursday. Part of that agenda is the new FOIA request. The FOIA law has changed, and right now I have our legal counsel working on our forms, so be looking sometime in early July. We'll have new forms for FOIA. I'll come back to the board for approval, and it's just a whole different revamp of that law, so that's all I have.
Thanks. Trustee Pompo. Trustee LaRue.
I wanted to bring up earlier in the meeting about parking in Lions Field. We have as of, a couple weeks ago, we don't want anyone parking around the outside field, because what we're gonna do is start doing landscaping, then we'll start seeding that, and we try to put up, telephone poles and barriers, and they're still going through it. I put up some yellow tape and it came off, so I have to go over tonight and I'll tie it back up, but we don't want anyone parking up there because we want to get it done. All right, thank you.
Thanks. If there's no other comments, I'd entertain one last motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes.
Got
Thank
2
you.
more minutes.